Chapter 853. Pang Xiao smiled and said, "Now that Sir has said it, this matter is indeed very promising. The Chiu family wants to use an imperial envoy to deal with me. It won't be that easy." At this time, Xu Weiji looked at Qin Yining, who hadn't spoken this entire time, and asked, "Does Wang Fei have any ideas?" Qin Yining was suddenly stopped. He came back to his senses and said with a smile, "Sir Xu is sharp. I do have some ideas." Meeting the three pairs of curious eyes, Qin Yining smiled and said, "I was thinking that we naturally can't let them succeed in this business deal. We know that they want to harm Wang Yi, so how can we allow them to work together? With the first cooperation, there will be a second, a third. This is not good for Wang Yi. Why don't we ruin it the first time? It would be best if they shed all pretense of cordiality." Wang Fei is very right. Xu Weiji smiled and nodded. Xie Yu also said, "The Lu family and the Chiu family actually have that kind of relationship. Both families are old aristocratic families with roots that have been intertwined for hundreds of years. Their foundations are even more stable than when Biji was still around. Regardless of whether their relationship is mutually beneficial or not, it is true that they do not have good intentions towards Prince. Also, not only can we not let them succeed in this business deal, if we can profit from it, that would be even better." Qin Yining paced around thoughtfully. Pang Xiao looked at her back and couldn't help but smile and say, "She really is a clever girl. I say that the children are smart because they take after you. Wang Fei is smart. This is something we already knew." Xie Yu smiled, but swallowed the second half of his sentence. In reality, he wanted to say that if this matter was in the hands of wise Panan, then it wouldn't be a problem at all. Wang Yi could ask his father-in-law and say a few words. Wouldn't he have an idea? Qin Huayuan used to often discuss matters of the court with Pang Xiao. He often had shocking words to say when to criticize the current situation. Furthermore, he had been in the bureaucracy for many years. He understood when to do what and when to do. He really did give Pang Xiao a lot of advice. It was a pity that the heavens didn't fake the years. Xie Yu and Xu Weiji were both afraid of talking about Qin Yining's sad past, so they deliberately avoided talking about it. Qin Yining thought for a moment and said, "I have some ideas, but we need to know who the two families have arranged for the negotiations." Previously, Qiu Yuan Qing had arranged for his son. Now that Qiu Fei Jing was dead, it was unknown who the Qiu clan would arrange for to take over Guangtong ship. As for the Lu family, they have been in business for so many years. I wonder how many businesses they have in Danju Prefecture. "Hey, Wang Yi, have you ever been to Danju Prefecture?" Pang Xiao nodded. "I've been there before. It's not too far from here. We'll head towards Liang City from here, and then we'll reach it in the southeast direction." The scenery there was pleasant, and it was like spring all year round. It was said that there were talented men and beautiful women there. "So you went there specifically for the talented men and beautiful women?" Qin Yining joked with a smile. Pang Xiao heard this and repeatedly bowed, making Qin Yining chuckle. Even Xie Yu and Xu Weiji couldn't help but laugh at the loving couple. After laughing heartily, Xu Weiji said, "According to what Wang Fei said, we really have to make a trip to Danju Prefecture. After all, if we send someone to investigate, it's easy to leak information. Moreover, there are many things that need to be seen with one's own eyes. There are many things that need to be done in a timely manner. Mr. Xu is right." Qin Yining turned around and smiled at Pang Xiao. "You still have to guard the South Pacifying Army and can't leave. How about I make a trip to Danju?" Pang Xiao heard this and his expression immediately became serious. He flatly refused, "No." Qin Yining was a little surprised by such a blunt refusal. Why is Wang Yi so determined? Pang Xiao also realized that his attitude wasn't very good. He hurriedly explained, "Every time I let you out of my sight, you always cause trouble. Tell me, how many dangerous situations have you encountered? Which one of them didn't have a narrow escape? These are the matters of us men. In the future, you just need to stay at home and take care of the children and family. Isn't this what we agreed on a long time ago?" Qin Yining smiled. "I know you're worried about me, but, in any case, I can't. I won't let you go to Danju Prefecture." Pang Xiao's attitude was so unyielding that it made Xie Yu and Shu Weiji, the two bystanders, fearful. Qin Yining said, "But this matter is very important. Just now, Mr. Shu and Mr. Xie have already analyzed the pros and cons of this matter. I feel that it's better to personally investigate this matter before making a decision. After all, our opponents are two great aristocratic families, one in the open and one in the dark. Who knows if there's a plot behind this?" Qin Yining's straightforward words made Pang Xiao fall silent. After a long time, he said, "Sister Yi, be good. This time, I'll personally make a trip." Qin Yining knew that Pang Xiao was powerful, but she felt that this matter wasn't as simple as it seemed. "Can you leave the military camp? This time, you can't bring the troops out to suppress the bandits." Pang Xiao thought for a moment, then his gaze fell on Xie Yu. "With Mr. Xie here, we can't do anything. With Mr. Xie here, it's easy to make Wang Yi in such a short time." Qin Yining finally remembered that Xie Yu was proficient in the art of disguise. When she first came to the capital with Xie Yu, she had once disguised herself as Pang Xiao to fool people. Qin Yining's eyes turned. He suddenly said, "Since that's the case, let's go together. It'll be more convenient. Mr. Xie's disguise can help us change our appearances. When the time comes, it'll be easier to do things." When Pang Xiao heard that they were going together, she was actually a little tempted. Danju Prefecture was the most famous place in the south with beautiful mountains and rivers. Ever since Qin Yining got married to him, other than when they had to go to disaster relief or when they were kidnapped, they had never really gone out to see the scenery together. This time, they were going to investigate the negotiations between the Qiu family and the Lu family. If they could take the opportunity to go to Danju Prefecture and take a look, it would satisfy one of their regrets. When Qin Yining saw that Pang Xiao was wavering, he continued, "Now that grandmother and the others are at home, you can help take care of the children. When the children grow up and start to learn, I won't be able to leave. At that time, I won't be able to leave even if I wanted to." "All right." Pang Xiao agreed quickly. After a moment of surprise, she smiled and said, "Forget it. Let's go together. We'll just treat it as going out to play and doing things on the way." Xie Yu and Shu Weiji both laughed. "Since Wang Yi and Princess Consort are planning to go out, then we must disguise ourselves. In addition, we have to arrange things in the military camp," Xie Yu said. Shu Weiji lowered his eyes and thought for a moment. Then he said, "Fortunately, Danju Prefecture isn't far from here. If we take a boat, we'll arrive in 3 or 4 days. If Princess Consort's health permits, taking a boat will reduce the bumpiness of the carriages and also allow you to enjoy the scenery along the way." Qin Yining was tempted. He smiled and said, "Taking a boat is nothing. I've taken a small boat before. If we go out on a large boat, it'll naturally be safer." Pang Xiao saw that the matter had been decided. She smiled and said to Qin Yining, "Then I'll send you home first. Then I'll arrange some things. You should also go back and arrange things in the Fu. Think about what you need to bring and who you need to bring with you when you go out. There's still more than a month until the 10th of October. This time is enough for us to prepare." Qin Yining smiled and nodded. Then he went home first. The 10th of October was the day the Qiu family and the Lu family would make a deal. Even though, as Pang Xiao said, there was enough time to prepare, they would be delayed for 3 or 4 days on the road. When they arrived at Danju Prefecture, they still had to find out who the two families had arranged for the negotiation. Then they had to deal with them one by one. In addition, there were a lot of things to do at home and in the military. Qin Yining and Zhao both became busy. Fortunately, there were many people at home. Qin Yining entrusted Zhao Jie and Han Jie to his mother and 2 maternal aunts. That was the most reassuring. When Zhao Jie and Han Jie heard that Qin Yining and Pang Xiao were going out, they didn't make a fuss at all. Han Jie even hugged Qin Yining's neck and kissed his mother's cheek. "Mother works the hardest. Mother is the best. Why do you say that?" Qin Yining's heart softened. She hugged Han Jie and Zhao Jie and kissed their cheeks. Han Jie said, "Great-grandmother said that mother is going out to work. She wants to buy a lot of snacks for Han Jie. Earn money." Zhao Jie nodded. "Yes, Yes. Earn money so that Han Jie can marry a beautiful wife, Han Jie said. Qin Yining knew that her grandmother was afraid that if she was always away from the children, they would grow distant from her and resent her for not accompanying them. The two children didn't know much, but the seeds of gratitude and filial piety had already been planted in their little hearts. However, when she heard the last part, she couldn't help but laugh. Han Jie isn't even 2 years old yet. You're already thinking about getting married? Qin Yining deliberately teased him. Zhao Jie nodded seriously. Marrying a wife is good. How is marrying a wife good? Great-grandmother said that marrying a wife is good. Zhao Jie tried his best to express it. Han Jie rushed to say, Great-grandmother said that father is lucky to have married a good wife. So marrying a wife is good. Qin Yining's heart was moved. Madame Zheng sincerely cared about her, but how could Madame Ma not sincerely love her? Hugging and kissing the children, Qin Yining simply had endless words to say. Even if the two children were talking like children, it didn't affect their happy mood at all. However, when she thought of being separated from the children, Qin Yining was still reluctant in her heart. However, the matter was in front of her. She had to face it together with Pang Xiao and solve it together. Only by solving the matters outside could the children grow up safely and have no worries in the future. After 2 days, everything was ready. Qin Yining brought Ji Yun and Bing Tang early in the morning and quietly left the family Qin with Pang Xiao. Xie Yu had already found Jinghu Wei, who had a similar figure to Pang Xiao. She dressed him up as Pang Xiao and arranged for him to live in a house in the old capital. Occasionally, she would let him replace Pang Xiao to go out for a walk. With Xie Yu and Shu Weiji following him, there shouldn't be any mistakes. Originally, in order to make it look realistic, Huzi was almost left behind. Qin Yining persuaded Pang Xiao, when we go out, don't treat Huzi and Bing Tang badly. I specially brought Bing Tang. You can't leave Huzi alone. Besides, even if everyone knows that Huzi is the most capable person by your side, it's hard to guarantee that you will arrange for him to investigate which bandit nest. You can ask Huzi to set off separately with us and gather somewhere outside the city. Pang Xiao thought that it made sense. When he saw Huzi's puppy-like eyes, he immediately laughed and agreed. Chapter 854. Xie Yu prepared the tools needed for the disguise and explained, because I'm staying, it won't be convenient for Wang Yi and Wang Fei to disguise themselves. If I'm not here, it'll be easy for the two of you to expose yourselves. Why don't you just disguise yourselves and change your aura so that people won't be able to guess that it's the two of you? We'll listen to teacher. Pang Xiao smiled and nodded. Qin Yining thought for a moment, dress Wang Yi up as a hedonistic son of rich parents, and I'll dress up as the concubine he brings out. Pang Xiao was stunned. Why do I have to dress you up as a concubine? I won't allow it. Qin Yining didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's not like I'm really going to be a concubine. Think about what kind of place Danju City is. Would a hedonistic son of rich parents who splurged on money bring his official wife along when he goes out? Of course, it's best to bring a beautiful concubine on a sightseeing tour. This kind of identity won't easily arouse suspicion. Xie Yu also said, Wang Fei's words are reasonable. Since she's like this, Wang Fei must pay attention to what she's wearing. I'm afraid that Wang Fei will have to suffer and dress more brightly. In the eyes of those who didn't know, Qin Yining still had to observe mourning for Qin Huayuan. She usually wore stone green, sky green, ivory white, and other colors. She rarely wore brightly colored clothes. Little did they know that Qin Yining deliberately dressed up like this outside. Qin Yining didn't feel embarrassed at all when Xie Yu said this. After all, his father was still alive and well. Dressing brightly will also prevent people from suspecting that it's me. After all, people who are observant know about family Qin. Wang Fei is smart. This old man means exactly that. This will dispel most people's suspicions. Pang Xiao didn't care. He had seen many hedonistic sons of rich parents, so it wasn't difficult for him to disguise himself as one. The clothes that Xie Yu found for Pang Xiao were extremely bright and vulgar. If they weren't embroidered with a large green peony, then they were embroidered with flowers and blue jewel patterns. These materials couldn't wait to embroider gems directly on the clothes, as if they were afraid that people wouldn't know that he was a rich young master. If an ordinary person wore these clothes, they would appear dull and dull. However, Pang Xiao's imposing manner was awe-inspiring, and his appearance was handsome. His vulgar clothes did not seem vulgar at all. Instead, he looked rather free and easy in them. Don't you have a hunchback? Don't make your back hunch. Don't bend your back. Don't be hunchback. Eyes. Pang Xiao followed Xie Yu's instructions. He crossed his legs, hunched his back, and his eyes seemed to be unable to open. There was a lazy smile at the corner of his mouth. He put away his cold and hard temperament and immediately became a handsome young master of a rich family. Qin Yining covered her mouth as she looked at Pang Xiao's appearance. She laughed softly. It's rare to see Wang Yi dressed so gorgeously. Gorgeously dressed? Is that how you describe a romantic talent like Ben Gongzi? Pang Xiao stuffed his folding fan into his collar. He grabbed Qin Yining and hugged her. You, little wife, are becoming more and more daring. Has he spoiled you too much and spoiled you? Xie Yu nodded. Yes, yes. That's right. Wang Fei, you have to cooperate. You're not a Wang Fei now. You're a beautiful concubine born from a romantic family. You have to cling to the young master for the rest of your life. Qin Yining nodded. She thought about how Cao Yuqing had purposely pretended to be a beautiful concubine in the past. She immediately softened her body and pressed against Pang Xiao. She hugged Pang Xiao's arm. She raised her head and said coquettishly, Young master, please calm down. This servant doesn't dare to do it again. Pang Xiao's heart shook. His muscles and bones went soft, and he almost lost his composure. Xie Yu nodded. Good, good. Wang Yi and Wang Fei acted very well. Now, you two are the young master of Guangtong Hao and the young master's new beautiful concubine. She turned and said to Bing Tang and Ji Yun, you two Gunyang also have to disguise yourselves. You can't show the elegance of a noble family. It's best to be submissive and not attract attention. Birds of a feather flock together. Wang Fei's servant girls all had the bearing of young misses raised by wealthy families. Xie Yu was not worried that Qin Yining and Pang Xiao would not act well. She was just afraid that the people around her would show flaws in the details. They could not underestimate anyone. The Lu family and the Qiu family were able to have a heritage of more than 100 years. They could also set down such ancestral teachings. It could be seen that they were not simple people. Bing Tang and Ji Yun also knew that this trip was important. They went to change into stone blue cotton outfits. Inside, they wore emerald green jackets and trousers. Their hair was combed into 2 regular buns. They did not put on any makeup. They specially made their faces darker. The beauty of these 2 servant girls immediately decreased greatly. The 2 then went to help Qin Yining change his clothes. Qin Yining changed into a dark blue collared jacket with narrow sleeves. She wore a Yang Fei-colored high-waisted skirt and a rose-red silk shawl. Her hair was combed into a high bun. On one side, there was a large butterfly hairpin, and on the other side, there was a fashionable flower hairpin. Qin Yining raised the ends of her eyebrows slightly. She used a small red plum flower in between her eyebrows. She also used a rarely used bright red lipstick for her lips. Then, she used a light pink rouge to sweep the ends of her eyes. She looked in the mirror left and right. It's really true that clothes make the person. After dressing up like this, I don't look like a good person. Qin Yining practiced her facial expressions. Bing Tang and Ji Yun had never seen Qin Yining dress like this before. They were dazed. Bing Tang laughed and said, if you don't want to be a good person, you have to look at your face. Qin Yining couldn't help but laugh and hit her. Loquacious. Be careful. When I get on the boat, I'll chase Huzi back. Ji Yun burst out laughing. Bing Tang's face flushed red. She stamped her feet and said, Princess Consort is too bad. Hey, you have to pay attention to how you address me. Qin Yining raised a finger and said, you have to remember that Wang Yi will be young master Wn in the future. I will be Lady Ning. Do you understand? Pang Xiao had investigated before. To the public, Guangdong's ship claimed that the old owner's surname was Wan. It turned out that Qiu Feijing also claimed that his surname was Wan. Yes. The two servant girls nodded. After dressing up properly, Qin Yining went to the outer room for Xiaoyu to take a look. Xiaoyu nodded and said, "Princess consort looks very good like this." Pang Xiao took out a fan from behind her collar and opened it. She excitedly waved the fan while circling Qin Yining. She made a drooling expression and said, "Little wife, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, yes, yes." Wang Yi did the right thing. Xiaoyu nodded repeatedly. Pang Xiao chuckled and returned to her usual appearance. She said, "The carriage is ready. Let's board the ship now." Qin Yining smiled and nodded. After bidding farewell to Xiaoyu and Shu Weiji, the group of people came out of the back door of the temporary residence. They boarded the carriage and headed to the docks. The old capital was originally the heart of the Dian dynasty. Naturally, it had roads and waterways that extended in all directions. Dian fell overnight. In addition, natural and man-made disasters occurred one after another, causing the docks to gradually become abandoned. It was only half a year ago that they began to use it again. It was early in the morning. There was a thin layer of mist on the surface of the river. The water and the sky seemed to form a line. A gorgeous and exquisite double-decker ship was anchored by the river. There were already many people walking around on the ship. Pang Xiao held Qin Yining's hand and stepped onto the gangplank of the ship. "Watch your steps. Step on the steps above." Qin Yining nodded. He walked to the middle and looked around. The water seemed very deep. "Are you afraid?" "No." Qin Yining smiled. "I can doggy paddle." Pang Xiao laughed. "Doggy paddle is nothing. When I have time later, I'll go into the water to catch fish and roast it for you." "That's great. I haven't eaten your food in a long time." "I haven't had time. In fact, I like cooking very much. When things are stable in the future, I'll cook your favorite dishes for you every day. I'm afraid I'll become a fatty." The two of them chatted and laughed as they boarded the ship. Huzi walked up to them with a smile. "Young master, Mrs. Ning." "Yes. Tell them to set sail." Pang Xiao closed her fan and held Qin Yining's hand. "I'll take you to familiarize yourself with the ship. I bought this ship and haven't used it much." Qin Yining smiled and said, "We have such a beautiful ship. In the future, we can try to go down the river and travel around." "Yes. At that time, I saw that this ship was very sturdy, so I wanted to buy it and take you out to play in the future. You know that even now, ships are still used for war. I bought this ship when Dian was about to be destroyed. Those officials took advantage of the loopholes and ran amok. Otherwise, it wouldn't have worked." Qin Yining didn't know much about ships. Hearing this, he hesitated and said, "Is it bad for us to just use it like this?" "There's nothing bad about it." At that time, the Dian imperial court was very corrupt. Those officials were afraid that they couldn't get their money back, so they sold everything they could. "I'm not the only one who has a ship, and I'm not the only one who uses it. It's okay." Qin Yining was finally relieved. He smiled and said, "As long as you know what you're doing." Qin Yining and Pang Xiao walked around the ship hand in hand. Finally, they returned to the parlor on the second floor and sat down. The two of them had been playing the role they wanted to play ever since they left the house. They were afraid that they wouldn't be able to change some of their habits. It was quite amusing to be so pretentious. At least, Pang Xiao thought it was very interesting. After all, he was currently playing the role of a lecherous playboy. Idling on the ship was also boring. He really had 2 days of desolation that he dreamed of. Lust. Unrestrained days. When the ship neared the docks of Danju City, Qin Yining actually felt a sense of relief. They had finally reached their destination. Otherwise, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to take it. Danju City's beaching lake is the most famous. Let's buy a pleasure boat later. These days, we can walk around during the day and stay on the pleasure boat at night. We can also see the famous night view of the beaching lake. As for our ship, let's anchor it here for the time being." Pang Xiao was in high spirits. He really treated this trip as a sightseeing trip. Qin Yining smiled and nodded. I'll listen to you. If I want to be a playboy, I naturally have to spend a lot of money. It's not bad to buy a pleasure boat as the first thing. Exactly. Pang Xiao smiled and nodded. Huzi on the side listened and grinned. Master, don't talk about buying a pleasure boat as if it's as easy as buying a candy man. That's money that many people can't earn in several lifetimes. Pang Xiao laughed and said, what's there to be afraid of? Who doesn't invest money in business? There will be returns in the future. At the very least, we'll earn a lot of money to play. Your master is happy. Do you know how much money per kilogram of happiness costs? Huzi looked at Wang Yi, who seemed to have returned to his youth. He couldn't help but smile and join in the fun. Young master, you don't know how much money per kilogram of happiness costs, but Mrs. Ning's happiness is priceless. Exactly. You brat, you can be considered to have inherited some of this young master's dissolute ways. Chapter 855. Although Danju City and the old capital were large cities of similar scale, Danju City's geographical location allowed it to avoid being trampled by iron hooves during the war between the two countries. Unlike the old capital, which had been baptized by the flames of war, famine, and earthquake, Danju City had always retained its former appearance. At this time, the streets of Danju City were as bustling as those of the capital. Walking through the bluestone paved alleys, all one could see were whitewashed walls, black tiles, and tall eaves. Even the hawkers' voices were filled with the charm of a hometown. It was as if life had suddenly become less rushed here, and even the people had become elegant. Qin Yining held onto Pang Xiao's arm, vividly imitating a beautiful concubine trying to curry favor with her master. She acted coquettishly all the way, using her soft body to rub against him intentionally or unintentionally. As she walked, her silk cloak fluttered gently, and her fragrance wafted in the air. She was born with such an appearance, and she had deliberately dressed up. She even purposely acted flirtatiously to attract attention. The pedestrians and hawkers on the street all stopped to stare at the outstanding couple with their mouths agape. Even the women couldn't help but take a few more glances. Young master, I've taken a fancy to that pair of prawn whisker bracelets. If you give me a whiff, not to mention a pair of prawn whisker bracelets, I'll even give you a whole set of ruby noodles. You're so bad. The beauty said bad, but she still snuggled up to the richly dressed rich young master. Everyone was speechless. There were also some women who spat at Qin Yining's back. There was also an unmarried woman wearing a veil hat who stopped and looked in Pang Xiao's direction. However, after seeing his crude and vulgar behavior, no matter how handsome he was, he would still be annoying if he wasn't likable. The two of them brought their two maidservants and Huzi through the city ostentatiously. Qin Yining bought a lot of rouge and hair ornaments, as well as many new rulers. She even bought small tigers, rattles, and exquisite pinwheels for children. Let's take the ruler back home to tailor clothes for our family. We can't miss out on gifts for the children. After lunch, the group of people had already arrived at the lakeside of Beaching Lake. They boarded the two-story pleasure boat that they had just bought. Qin Yining rubbed his sore calves and said, "Let's rest on the pleasure boat in the afternoon. I think the scenery here is very good. There are singers on the other pleasure boats as well. It's not bad to listen to them. How fresh is that? Do we need to listen to other people's songs? We invited them ourselves, but they only arrived in the afternoon," Pang Xiao said with a smile. "Since we're here to show off, how can we lack these extravagant things?" Qin Yining found a comfortable angle on the chaise lounge and sighed comfortably. "Flaunting my wealth is tiring. I'm not afraid of going out, but I still have to act outside. It's too tiring. So it's true that every trade has its own master. Those who specialize in swindling people don't have it easy either. Of course. Nothing is easy in this world." Pang Xiao dragged a small stool and sat beside Qin Yining. His large hands massaged her legs and feet. Qin Yining turned over and lay on his side. "Hey, have you arranged for people to scout out the situation in the city? What are the Lu family's plans for this place? Danju is a big city after all, and it hasn't been baptized by the flames of war. I suspect that the Lu family has a hand in most of the businesses here. I've already arranged for people to scout. Pang Xiao said in a low voice as he massaged Qin Yining. While we're waiting for news, let's do our best to show off. It's best if everyone in Danju City knows that a rich young master has come to Danju, and that he's the kind who loves to show off. Okay. Qin Yining's eyes sparkled. His expression was eager to give it a try. It seems that you enjoy playing the role of a concubine. Qin Yining only looked at Pang Xiao with a gentle smile. Pang Xiao's heart thumped. Why are you looking at me like that? Qin Yining shook his head and said softly, I don't enjoy playing the role of a concubine. It's just that the two of us rarely have the chance to be together like this. I feel that it's very interesting to go out with you and watch you spend money like this. Pang Xiao's heart almost melted. He understood that Sister Yi liked to be with him. Whether it was pretending to be a concubine or something else, as long as she was with him, she liked it very much. How could she be so soft and obedient? Good Sister Yi, you're the best. Pang Xiao didn't care about anything else and hugged Qin Yining in his arms like he was hugging a child. Bing Tang and Ji Yun, who were waiting on the side, blushed. They tactfully retreated and dismissed all the guards on this floor. The two of them chatted and laughed in the room for the entire afternoon. They really cherished the opportunity in front of them. It was as if they had specially gone out to play. They didn't want to waste this good time. In the next few days, Qin Yining and Pang Xiao continued to play in Danju City and a few famous scenic spots around it. Danju was near the water. The two of them mostly went by pleasure boat. They saw the lake and the mountains along the way. The breeze brushed past their faces. What entered their eyes was the vast expanse of scenery. It was as if even the depression in their hearts had dissipated. Soon, the spies arranged by Pang Xiao brought back the information they had found. If you didn't look carefully, you wouldn't know. Half of the businesses here, big or small, are owned by the Lu family. There's also a large Lu family mansion here. It seems to be a side branch close to the main family. Master Lu is the uncle of the current head of the Lu family. There's also another piece of information. The local county magistrate has a close relationship with the Lu family. The county magistrate's daughter-in-law is a daughter of the Lu family. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao looked at each other when they heard this. So, the Lu family has basically become the sole authority here. Whether it's the imperial court or the business world, the Lu family has their own connections. Exactly. The spies said, therefore, it's almost impossible to find out who's in charge of the Lu family and Guangdong. First of all, the Lu family has people in charge in all aspects. It's impossible to know who they'll arrange. Also, with the Lu family's ability, they might not even care about Guangdong at all. Pang Xiao nodded and said, thank you for your hard work. He let his subordinate rest. Qin Yining was wearing a lined jacket. He tilted his head and looked at the river outside the Ruyi window. He said leisurely, this situation is not far from what I expected. Not to mention a small Guangdong, even if the Qiu family really showed up, people who haven't been to Zhenchuan personally wouldn't know what kind of colossus the Qiu family is. Why would they pay attention to this small businesses of selling officials and titles? Even if it was a big deal, it would become normal if it was done frequently and not caught. Qin Yining couldn't help but think of Lu Heng. When she returned to the capital, Lu Heng had specially come to visit her. She understood his feelings for her. He probably also understood her rejection of him. Therefore, Lu Heng never appeared again. Qin Yining couldn't help but wonder if Lu Heng knew that the Lu family was doing this kind of business. But when he thought about it, if Lu Heng didn't do anything, how could he influence the court's personnel? Therefore, Lu Heng should know about this. Now I know what the Lu family is relying on to make money. This kind of business is very profitable for the Lu family. Pang Xiao sat down next to Qin Yining. He took a candied fruit from the table and fed it to her. Qin Yining opened her mouth and ate it. A bump appeared on her cheek. She blinked and signaled for Pang Xiao to continue. Pang Xiao couldn't help but touch her cheek. He said with a smile, think about it. The most important thing to be an official is to have connections in the court. That's why there are small groups in the court. It's normal for people of the same faction to support and use each other. This time, The Chiu family bought an official. Even if they chose one of their own to be an official, after a long time, this person will gradually become part of the Lu family's faction. This is inevitable. By selling this official position, the Lu family will not only make a lot of money, but also establish their own connections in the court. This is a good business that kills two birds with one stone. This is the only time they do this. After a long time, there will be more people in the court and more money in their hands. It's no wonder that the Lu family has become such a huge entity. Qin Yining nodded. That's the reason. In my opinion, people are too greedy for money. They can use any method. But if this goes on for a long time, it'll be difficult for them to not cause trouble. Yes. If you want to gain both fame and fortune, you have to pay a lot and take a lot of risks. Qin Yining looked at the river outside the boat and said, "We've been here for so many days, but we still don't have a clue. It's less than a month before the two families make the deal. Will we be too late?" Pang Xiao stroked Qin Yining's loose hair and said with a smile, "If we observe carefully, we'll be able to find a breakthrough. In the worst case, even if they succeed in making the deal, we still have other methods." Qin Yining thought for a moment and smiled in relief. "You're right. I'm too nervous." "Don't be nervous. Just think of it as a vacation. Business is secondary." If Teacher Shu and Teacher Xie heard this, wouldn't they be very angry? However, Qin Yining was influenced by Pang Xiao's carefree attitude and was no longer as nervous. Another day passed. There was still no clue as to who the Lu family was going to be in charge of this deal. But something big happened in Danju City that everyone knew about. Lu Zheng, the eldest young master of the Lu family in Danju City, sold the fiancé of his follower, who grew up with him and was as close as a brother, to Tsuexiang Pavilion. This fiancé who was sold was also a first-class servant girl in the Lu family. No one knew what she had done wrong. Tsuexiang Pavilion's name was enough to know what kind of place it was. Normally, a large family like the Lu family would find a slave trader to deal with a servant who had done something wrong. They would never sell a servant girl to a brothel like this. Moreover, this servant girl who was sold was the fiancée of the eldest young master's closest follower. Qin Yining sat next to Pang Xiao on the second floor of the tea house by the window. He could still hear people discussing this matter in low voices. Pang Xiao whispered to Huzi behind him, "This is interesting. Go investigate what kind of servant girl was sold and how close the eldest young master's follower was." "Yes." Huzi answered and quickly went downstairs. Qin Yining smiled and said, "If this matter is handled well, we can still make use of it." Yes. It wasn't easy to find a breakthrough like this. Huzi went to investigate quickly. By the time Qin Yining and Pang Xiao returned to the pleasure boat, Huzi had already returned. Chapter 856. Huzi said, "It is said that Lu Shi studied with young Master Lu. The two of them are inseparable. Young Master Lu is probably not as close to Lu Shi as he is to his siblings." "That's understandable." Qin Yining said, "Even if they are siblings, it is hard to guarantee that there will be no discord when it comes to family matters. Servants get along with each other all the time, so they are closer than siblings." That was the case for her, Qiu Lu, Bing Tang, Ji Yun, Xian Yun, and Qiu Lu. They had gone through life and death with her. Ruelan had once sacrificed her life for her. She would never forget that for the rest of her life. Pang Xiao also nodded. Since it's such a relationship, then Lu Shi's engagement must have been approved by young Master Lu. Perhaps it was young Master Lu who chose the person himself. Something must have happened to make young Master Lu so angry. Replying to Master, this subordinate has yet to find out the reason. Qin Yining said thoughtfully, "Have you found out Lu Shi's attitude towards this matter?" "That's the strange part. That servant girl was sold to Tsuexiang Pavilion for only a few days, but Lu Shi became a frequent guest there. It is said that he went to Tsuexiang Pavilion every day to drink wine with prostitutes." "That's interesting." Pang Xiao rubbed his chin with a playful smile. "It seems that Lu Shi is still deeply in love with his fiancée. Young Master sold a servant girl and Lu Shi went to see her every day. Would there be any discord between the master and the servant?" Qin Yining asked Huzi, "What kind of person is young Master Lu?" "Madam Ning, The Lu family is one of the most influential families in Danju Prefecture. This place is far away from the capital. Without the comparison of the main family, this branch of the Lu family has the final say here. Whether it is the business route or the official route, this branch of the Lu family has done very well. It is said that all the newly appointed officials nearby have to visit the Lu family. This young Master Lu is the eldest son of the first wife of the Lu family. He has a distinguished character and excellent skills. At the age of 24, Master Lu has already handed over most of the Lu family's business to young Master Lu. I've also asked around among the common people. Everyone has a high opinion of young Master Lu. I haven't heard anyone say that he is a bully. Qin Yining said, so it is too suspicious that he sold his fiancée to a brothel. Yes. The people outside were all guessing that the maidservant had committed some heinous crime herself. But there are also people who say that it is too cruel to treat a young woman like this. But most people believe in young Master Lu's character. Pang Xiao's phoenix-like eyes narrowed with a smile as he looked at Qin Yining. It seems that we have a place to play tonight. Qin Yining couldn't help but laugh. Are you planning to take me on a tour of the fragrance pavilion? That is my intention. Qin Yining smiled. That is strange. I want to see the world. I was worried that you wouldn't agree. Why are you different from others? If it were someone else, who would take their wife to a brothel? Otherwise, you're just a concubine of this great master now. Pang Xiao raised his chin in an incomparably arrogant manner. Qin Yining laughed and curtsied. Yes, I will serve you well. Please take pity on me and don't drive me away. My beauty, my sweetheart, how can I bear to drive you away? Pang Xiao grabbed Qin Yining's hand impolitely. Qin Yining laughed and dodged. The two of them even laughed and joked, as if they had returned to their youth. Seeing this, Huzi giggled and quietly retreated, going outside to look for rock candy. After dinner, Qin Yining and Pang Xiao left with Huzi, Bing Tang, and Ji Yun. Jinghu Wei, who was supposed to accompany them, had to follow and protect them. Pang Xiao left him on the pleasure boat. He explained to Qin Yining in a low voice, Jinghu Wei's military aura is too strong. It is inevitable that people will see through them. It is more convenient for us to act like this. I know. Besides, you and Huzi are here. Nothing will happen. Pang Xiao nodded with a smile. At night, Danju City was brightly lit. Unlike the capital and the old capital, there was no curfew. There were many people walking on the streets. There were also peddlers doing business near the red light district. It was easy to find the location of Caishiang Pavilion. On the entire busy street, Caishiang Pavilion was the only building with 3 stories. Before entering, Pang Xiao and Qin Yining circled around Caishiang Pavilion. They found that the back of Caishiang Pavilion was built near the water. In this season, green vines climbed up the walls and the air was humid. When they returned to the front door, the sound of music and laughter could be heard from inside the building. There were a few gorgeously dressed girls at the door. When they saw a tall and handsome man walk in, they immediately went up to him like bees and waved their handkerchiefs to attract business. Oh, young master, you haven't been here for a few days. Young master, come sit at my place. I have prepared good wine and good food for you. Pang Xiao hugged Qin Yining's waist and swayed with every step he took. Although his back was hunched and his chest was tucked in, he was still a good-looking playboy. He was very popular with these girls. Pang Xiao waved his hand and pushed these girls aside. A big teapot with good eyesight came out to greet them, and led them inside. The girls at the door looked at Pang Xiao's back in disappointment and whispered to each other. This young master must be the one who recently came to the city and spent a lot of money. What do you mean by spent a lot of money? Hey, you don't know? There's an especially handsome young master in the city these days. He takes his beautiful concubine to play on the streets all day. How much money he spends. TSK, 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 it's like flowing water. I wonder what kind of family raised such a handsome young master. I heard about it too. Hey, do you guys think he's hugging that beautiful concubine? I wonder how she looks and how she compares to the other girls. Pang Xiao didn't care what others said about him. At this time, He had already led his people to a lively hall. Lanterns hung high in the hall and colored ribbons fluttered in the wind. The sound of musical instruments lingered in the air. In the center of the hall was a stage covered with a red carpet. A woman wearing a bright, bare chest was dancing to the beat of the drums. There were many 8-seater tables placed around the stage, and every table was full of guests. Some men were drinking and playing finger-guessing games. Others were talking loudly. Unsurprisingly, every table was accompanied by several orioles and swallows. The scene was very lively. At this time, a beautiful woman in her 30s walked over. She was wearing a rose-red cross-collared dress. Her hair was combed into a peony bun and she wore a fresh peony flower. Aya, I was wondering why the magpies were chirping so early in the morning. It turns out we have an important guest. My young master, Yu Chang, pays her respects to you. Well said. Pang Xiao took out a banknote and slapped it on Yu Chang's voluptuous chest. Find a clean place for me. Don't scare my little sister. Yu Chang picked up the banknote with her red-painted fingers. When she saw it, her eyes narrowed into slits. When she heard Pang Xiao's words, she immediately looked towards Pang Xiao's chest. Aya. Yu Chang's eyes widened as she looked at Qin Yining. She couldn't help but praise, what a good husband and wife. Your little sister is truly a great beauty. Pang Xiao proudly wrapped his arm around Qin Yining's waist and kissed him on the lips. Qin Yining had painted his lips red today. A bright red lipstick mark was imprinted on the corner of Pang Xiao's mouth. Seeing this, Yu Chang understood what was going on. She smiled and said, would you like to call a few servants? Our plucking fragrance pavilion is full of flowers. Although you've already obtained the peony, you're used to eating delicacies. It's good to eat some porridge and side dishes for a change. Whether you want a lady from a noble family or a pretty girl from a humble family, just say the word. There's nothing our plucking fragrance pavilion doesn't have. Pang Xiao followed Yu Chang up the stairs to the side, his thumb constantly playing with Qin Yining's red lips. This mother really knows how to talk. This prince also knows that it's difficult for you to find a peerless beauty like my good little sister. Just find all the best dishes here for this prince. I want the most expensive and the spiciest. Do you understand? Yes. Now that you've said it, this servant understands. Yu Chang led him to the most spacious and luxurious private room on the second floor. The view here was excellent. Opening the window, one could see the panoramic view of the first floor. It was also easy to watch the performance on the first floor. If one didn't want to, they could close the door and windows. The room was filled with charming pink and red gauze. Under the dim light of the palace lanterns, it outlined an ambiguous atmosphere. Pang Xiao pushed open the window and sat down at a square table with Qin Yining in his arms. He placed Qin Yining on his lap and looked down with great interest. Huzi, Bing Tang, and Ji Yun found an inconspicuous corner and stood still. Seeing this, Yu Chang knew that this was the son of a wealthy merchant. She didn't dare to neglect him and immediately ordered the teapot to prepare the food and wine. She personally went to call a few of the most outstanding girls in the pavilion. You all need to be careful. Today's guest is a rare person. You all need to be attentive. Don't be outdone by the one he brought. Memar, who would come to play with the sisters and bring someone? This one is here, and he's an immortal, Yu Chang whispered. Use all your tricks. The son of a wealthy family is just here to eat wild game. Don't lose face for plucking fragrance pavilion. Serve him well. You have many good girls. Go. When they reached the door, they pushed the 4 young ladies in red and green into the door. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao were currently observing the first floor's lobby. Their eyes fell on a square table directly across from the stage. He gently nudged Pang Xiao and pointed in that direction. Over there, he whispered. Pang Xiao also saw it. That square table could be said to be the best location on the first floor. There were 4 hot and 4 cold dishes on the table, but the people sitting at the table were cold and cheerless. There was only 1 man and 1 woman. Chapter 857. Qin Yining whispered into Pang Xiao's ear, it seems like the Lu family has a lot of influence. That's right. Pang Xiao took the opportunity to hug her and kiss her. It wasn't hard to judge the situation. A brothel like the Fragrance Pavilion must have connections with both the underworld and the underworld. However, such a place was willing to give the best spot to a servant, and even let the servant accompany him. This was all for the sake of the Lu family. At this time, the 4 girls had already arrived in front of them. The sisters looked at each other and went forward to bow. This servant pays respects to the Lord. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining focused their attention back on the room. The 4 girls who came were all above average in terms of beauty. At this time, the 4 of them had a dazed expression on their faces. When they saw Pang Xiao, the 4 of them cried out in surprise in their hearts. They couldn't wait for this young master to take a liking to them and bring them home. When they looked at Qin Yining, the excitement in his heart was doused with cold water. He was inferior, he was inferior. No wonder that old woman Yu Chang told them to serve him well. She even said that this young master came out to try something new. TSK, all men are the same. They have a fairy, yet they still come out to try something new. Although they said that, the 4 girls still stuck to him like sticky cakes. Young master, please have some wine. Young master, where are you from? Because Pang Xiao kept his arm around Qin Yining's waist, she was forced to sit on his lap. The group of orioles and swallows pounced on him. Qin Yining had nowhere to hide and was choked to the point of sneezing. Pang Xiao was stunned. He felt as if his heart had been patted by a kitten's soft paw. He thought to himself that his sister Yi would never use such strong fragrances, and rarely did she wear such heavy makeup. In comparison, the other girls were all vulgar in Pang Xiao's eyes. They couldn't be looked at. However, although Pang Xiao was disgusted, he did not do anything to these women. He only stretched out his arm slightly to push them away. As a woman who had spent a lot of time in the brothel, she had a clear understanding of who was superior. Seeing the attitude of the man in front of her, unlike the other brothel patrons, she understood. She stood to the side and poured tea, occasionally chatting with Pang Xiao and Qin Yining. The 4 women were all good with words, and the atmosphere quickly warmed up. Pang Xiao chatted and laughed with them. Several times, he had amused them and even rewarded them with a bag of small gold ingots. The 4 of them were extremely excited. If they divided the gold, it would be enough for them to redeem themselves. Such a generous guest only asked them to accompany him to drink a few cups of wine. It was a relaxing life. The 4 of them were extremely happy. Their words became even more honest. They answered almost everything that was asked. Not long after, Pang Xiao even figured out where they were from and how they had fallen into prostitution. After chatting and laughing for a while, they were full. Pang Xiao hugged Qin Yining and continued to watch the performance downstairs. It seemed that he was very interested in the singing and dancing. The 4 of them also joined in the fun and watched by the window, occasionally commenting. Qin Yining pretended to be surprised and pointed at the table downstairs. That table is really strange. Why are there only 2 people? The 4 women looked in the direction that Qin Yining pointed at and immediately laughed. They scrambled to explain. You don't know. Fu Shui is the new top hostess. Of course, she is treated differently. Yes, Fu Shui used to be the head maid of a big family. She was respected when she went out. However, because she made a mistake, she came to our brothel. Do you see that servant? He is not an ordinary servant. He is Fu Shui's fiancé. They were engaged before. The 4 women all talked at once. They were smart enough not to mention the Lu family. However, they confirmed Pang Xiao and Qin Yining's guess. Qin Yining looked back and smiled. Fu Shui is the head maid of a big family. Her fiancé must be someone important. Why didn't he pay money to redeem her? Hearing Qin Yining ask such a simple question, the 4 women couldn't help but think that the girl in front of them was too lucky. She was with a handsome and rich young master. She was probably spoiled to the point that she didn't know how to use her brain. She was sold by their young master's order. That man is the young master's servant. How could he disobey the young master and come to redeem her? But he comes every day. He has no choice but to disobey his young master. Mother has to prepare the best seats for him every day, and she doesn't dare to let Fu Shui receive the guests. It's really hard to serve him. The four women were interested in talking. They all talked about the special treatment that Fu Shui had received since she came to Caixing Pavilion. It seemed that because of the special treatment she received, the girls in the pavilion also had some ideas. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao looked at each other. They already had an idea. Pang Xiao said, "How is Fu Shui's appearance? Has she not received any guests yet?" The four people who were talking in full swing suddenly stopped. They all looked at Qin Yining subconsciously. Seeing Qin Yining's forced smile, they couldn't help but sigh. It seemed that they shouldn't envy this girl. Which cat didn't eat fish? This man didn't want the four of them to serve him because he didn't like them. He probably liked those who were clean. Although they were all complaining in their hearts, they all smiled and nodded. No matter what, if they could attract business for the building, it would only be beneficial to them and not detrimental. Having learned what they needed to know, Pang Xiao and Qin Yining no longer talked about this topic. They continued to watch the program downstairs. Occasionally, they would whisper affectionately. Seeing that it was about time, Pang Xiao turned around and ordered the four women, "Go, call your brothel keeper." "Yes." The four women said in unison. Knowing that there was nothing for them to do here, they took the bag of gold and left. Not long after, Yu Chang walked in, swaying her slender waist. "Young master, what orders do you have?" Yu Chang rolled her eyes and took the opportunity to glance at the furnishings in the room. She saw that the bed behind the curtain was still clean and tidy. Only the square table in the room had been moved. She couldn't help but smile. It seems that this servant's wine and dishes are not to the young master's taste. Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows and smiled. "You're right. This young master still likes to eat delicacies. Your porridge and side dishes are also not good. But this young master thinks that you're not bad." "Oh, don't make fun of this servant." Yu Chang covered her mouth and smiled. "Fine, as long as this young master is happy." "Happy, of course I'm happy." Pang Xiao waved his hand. Huzi immediately stuffed some more banknotes into his hands. Pang Xiao put his arm around Qin Yining's waist and walked out the door. Yu Chang immediately smiled and wanted to follow. "Oh, that's right." Pang Xiao suddenly stopped and turned around. "When I first came here, I have a servant girl who serves me tea. I want to buy one from you to serve me. What do you think?" Yu Chang was surprised, but then she smiled ambiguously. Just as she thought, he came to a brothel and ate a bellyful of food and wine. He even called four of the most popular girls here just to chat. So it turned out that he was thin-skinned and wanted to find a prettier explanation. Of course. It all depends on which one young master takes a fancy to. As long as young master can afford it, you can choose any of the girls in our brothel. When Pang Xiao heard this, he pointed downstairs and said, "Then I'll choose her." Yu Chang leisurely walked to the window and looked in the direction Pang Xiao was pointing. She saw that he was pointing in the direction of Fu Shui and Lu Shi. Yu Chang said in surprise, "Don't tell me you like the one wearing the pink gauze dress and crying?" "That's her. She's new to your brothel. She hasn't received any guests yet, right?" Pang Xiao showed a moderate amount of interest and modesty. The emphasis of his words was on the word receiving guests. Yu Chang immediately thought the same as the other four girls. She was sure that this young master wanted to choose a clean one and was too embarrassed to enjoy it in front of her. She looked Pang Xiao up and down again. She had heard that a rich young master had come to the city recently. His things were expensive and he looked like a spendthrift. Now it seemed that he was the same as the one in front of her. It seemed that he was a foreigner and didn't understand the business of Danju City. He didn't know about the disputes of the Lu family. When Fu Shui was brought to Plucking Fragrance Pavilion, it was like she had obtained a hot potato. She was afraid that Lu Shi would be unhappy and would come to see her every day. Fu Shui would cry whenever she saw Lu Shi. It made Plucking Fragrance Pavilion seem more like a memorial hall than a brothel. But if she didn't let Fu Shui receive guests, she was afraid that the young master of the Lu family would be unhappy. After all, the young master of the Lu family had ordered that person to be sent here. When he came, he had also specifically told her to entertain him well. She couldn't treat Fu Shui well or badly. It was a waste of money to keep her. Sooner or later, she would cause trouble for plucking Fragrance Pavilion. She looked at the young master in front of her. This foreigner had come at the perfect time. If she sold Fu Shui to him, she would take a step back and leave. Plucking Fragrance Pavilion would no longer have anything to do with the Lu family. As for whether or not the Lu family would look for this person, it had nothing to do with plucking Fragrance Pavilion. Yu Chang had calculated a lot, but in reality, it was just a matter of a breath. She pretended to hesitate and said, "She is a new girl in our plucking Fragrance Pavilion. She has worked in a big family before and has seen the world. She is beautiful and untainted. We are raising her like a courtesan and are afraid that she will be wronged." When Pang Xiao heard this, he knew there was a chance. He laughed and said, "I'll compensate you with more money. It's good that she has worked in a big family before. You don't even need to teach her how to serve tea." As he spoke, he slapped 2 more banknotes on the table. Yu Chang rolled her eyes and knew when to stop. She said helplessly, "All right then. Since young master likes her, this servant can only reluctantly part with her. Later, I will bring you to pick her up and give you her slave contract. She will be your servant." Although that was what she said, what kind of servant couldn't be bought with 1 or 2 taels of silver? Was there a need to spend so much money here? It was just an honest way of saying it. Yu Chang, who was walking behind them, looked at Qin Yining with pity. What was the use of a woman being beautiful? Her appearance couldn't compare to those fresh ones. What man didn't like fresh and exciting things? Everyone had their own thoughts when they arrived at the hall on the 1st floor. When Yu Chang saw Fu Shui sitting with Lu Shi, she felt disgusted. Chapter 858. Yu Chang's mind worked quickly. She asked the teapot beside her and knew that Lu Shi would be returning soon. If she brought up the matter of selling Fu Ji now, she would definitely get into an argument with Lu Shi. The gains would not make up for the losses. Therefore, she turned to Pang Xiao with a smile and said, "Young master, Fu Shui still has a guest, so it's not good to call her out right now. This servant will personally send someone to deliver her to you later. Is that all right?" Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows and pretended to be displeased. "What? This prince spent money and still has to suffer such grievances? Is this prince's money not real money? What are you talking about?" Yu Chang slapped her thigh and shook her head. "This prince is a handsome and magnanimous person. Why would he lower himself to the same level as people like us? Besides, even if you lent us 10,000 guts, we wouldn't dare to deceive you. In a moment, I will definitely deliver her to you. If I don't, our Tsuexiang Pavilion is right here. If you come back and smash my Tsuexiang Pavilion, I won't complain and will let you do whatever you want with me." When Pang Xiao heard this, he seemed to have calmed down a bit. "All right, since you've said so, this prince won't make things difficult for you. Give me her indenture contract first, then we'll write another one and send her over later." "Ah, in the end, you're still the most reasonable one." Yu Chang giggled and ordered someone to bring Fu Shui's indenture contract. She also had someone write a contract and bring it over on a tray, then stamped it with her handprint. Qin Yining stepped forward and took the 2 items. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he handed them over to Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao seemed to have lost his patience and threw the items to Huzi behind him. Then, he swaggered away with Qin Yining's shoulder. Yu Chang watched Pang Xiao's back as he walked away. She couldn't help but put her hands together and pray. "Heavens bless me, I've finally gotten rid of this hot potato. Hopefully, the Lu family's young master won't come looking for trouble." However, she wasn't afraid even if the Lu family sent someone over. She could just say that someone had forced her to go there, and she just had to pull herself out of the situation. Qin Yining returned to the pleasure boat with Pang Xiao. Bing Tang and Ji Yun served the refreshments and retreated to the side. Qin Yining picked up the pastel teacup and took a sip to soothe his throat. "Now that we've bought her, the Lu family should be here soon. Have you thought about how to deal with it? Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. No matter how powerful the Lu clan is, can they be more powerful than me?" Pang Xiao moved closer to Qin Yining and sat down next to her. He placed his large hand on her shoulder and pulled her into his arms. Qin Yining chuckled and reached out to push him away. Are you addicted to hugging her? She didn't want it to become a habit. If she did it again when she returned home, wouldn't she scare everyone at home? This is not dignified and will be a joke to others. What's there to be afraid of? I'm a military ruffian, so why should I be dignified? Moreover, most of the men in the military left their wives and children to fight in the war to earn money. Now that they have the chance to go home, who doesn't want to crawl into their wives' beds first? You and I don't spend much time together. I hate that I can't hold you in my arms every day. Now that we have the chance to meet, you want me to follow the rules. Aren't you being too unreasonable? As Pang Xiao spoke, his large hands rudely touched Qin Yining's body. Whenever he found her ticklish flesh, he would unceremoniously sneak an attack on her. Qin Yining was the most ticklish, so she laughed and dodged. Pang Xiao held back his strength to tease her. He loved to see her gasping for breath, blushing cheeks, laughing and begging for mercy. He only stopped when the beautiful woman was laughing until her eyes were watery, and she was glaring at him with resentment and anger. As for Bing Tang and Ji Yun, they were used to serving her, so they had already retreated a long time ago. They definitely wouldn't be so insensible as to appear when they shouldn't. The two of them laughed and joked for a while. Suddenly, Pang Xiao raised his finger and made a shushing gesture. Qin Yining sat up in confusion and looked at him. Only then did she realize that Huzi was talking to someone on the shore. There was also the sound of a woman's suppressed crying on the shore. Qin Yining admired Pang Xiao's hearing. Just now, they were all fooling around, so she didn't hear anything unusual. The two of them left the bedroom and walked to the corridor to look out the window. With the light from the large red lanterns on the pleasure boat, they could see that two strong men were holding a girl with a big braid. She was wearing a small jacket and trousers. The girl was forced to kneel on the ground and was struggling with all her might. Her mouth was gagged with a rag, so she was crying. Qin Yining couldn't help but feel pity for her. She's also a pitiful person. Let her go when the matter is resolved. Pang Xiao smiled and said, I'll listen to you. The two of them walked to the deck hand in hand. Pang Xiao smiled and walked to the front of the deck. He hugged Qin Yining with one hand and put the other hand on his waist. With his legs crossed and his back hunched, he said casually, I asked your Taixiang pavilion to send someone over. Why did you send her so late? Are you looking down on this young master? Let me tell you, this young master is the young master of the WN family of Guangdong Island. In the future, the entire Guangdong Island will be mine. You people should be careful. If you offend me, you'll be skinned. When Qin Yining heard Pang Xiao's tone, he almost couldn't hold back his laughter. He hurriedly buried his face in Pang Xiao's arms and grinned happily. When Pang Xiao saw the person in his arms like this, he almost couldn't hold it in. However, he still managed to hold it in with his strong willpower. Under the pleasure boat, Big Teapot, who had brought people over, quickly bowed and smiled apologetically. Young master, please calm down. We don't dare to have such intentions. It's this girl who doesn't know any better. Let me explain to her and she'll immediately understand. As soon as he turned around, Big Teapot's expression changed. He bent down and pinched Fu Shue's chin, raising her head. He gnashed his teeth and said, You damn girl, I advise you to be sensible. Why don't you take a look at where you are? This is young Master Wan. How can you make a scene in front of him? Do you think that your lover can save you? To put it bluntly, no matter how high his status is, he's just a servant. He's just relying on his master's favor. Master sold you, but he's unwilling to let go. If this continues, sooner or later, he'll be at odds with his master. At that time, he can't even protect himself, so how can he protect you? Take a look at this one. Big Teapot flashed and forced Fu Shui, whose face was full of tears, to look at the boat. This is a young master. Since he's taken a fancy to you, you can't run away. Why don't you follow him? In the future, you'll have a son or a daughter, and he'll be willing to be your concubine. Wouldn't you be satisfied with this life? Many girls in the brothel dream of a future. You finally got it, so don't make a fuss. Accept your fate. If you make a fuss again, I'll throw you into the lake to feed the fish. Big teapots lecturing and threatening made Fu Shui really stop. She raised her head and stared blankly at the tall figure standing on the deck. The lights on both sides just happened to illuminate his handsome face. He had sword-like eyebrows and phoenix-like eyes. Such a young and handsome person wanted her. Big Teapot saw that she was sensible and finally let out a sigh of relief. He turned around and bowed to Pang Xiao. Young Master Wn, she's sensible now. Do you want her to go up? Yes. Pang Xiao stretched out his voice and nodded. Come up. The two men tried to loosen their grip, but Fu Shui didn't struggle anymore. Instead, she got up and threw away the rag in her mouth. She patted the dust off her clothes, lowered her head, and obediently followed Hu Zi onto the boat step by step. Big Teapot saw that they got on the boat, bowed to the two strong men, and quickly ran away. Finally, they got rid of the hot potato. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Hu Zi brought Fu Shui onto the deck and retreated to Pang Xiao's side. Fu Shui knelt down and kowtowed. Fu Shui greets the young master. Her voice was soft and sweet, and pleasant to the ear. Pang Xiao grunted, get up. Thank you, young master. Fu Shui stood up and looked up at Pang Xiao. When she saw him, she was stunned. When they were on the shore, there was some distance, and it was also night. Even if there was a light, she couldn't see clearly. Now that she saw him up close, Fu Shui's face turned red. She lowered her head shyly and said, Thank you, young master, for redeeming my freedom. From now on, I'm your woman. I'll go through fire and water for you. No matter what you want me to do, I'll do it willingly. Qin Yining raised his eyebrows and looked at Fu Shui. Did she take a fancy to her husband? Pang Xiao frowned. Then, he said calmly, how can the young master make such a beautiful woman like you sacrifice your life for him? Fu Shui's heart trembled. She quickly looked up at Pang Xiao and lowered her head again. Young master, I'll do as you say. Even if you want me to serve you for the rest of my life, I'm willing. So she was this kind of person. Pang Xiao sneered. It was a pity that his sister Yi's kindness was wasted. There's no need for you to serve me for the rest of your life. I'm lacking a servant girl on my pleasure boat. You'll work hard on the boat from now on. Servant girl? Fu Shui looked up in surprise. Her eyes widened, and her small nose wrinkled. She pursed her lips, feeling wronged. Young master, you want me to be a servant girl? Young master, you don't know, but I used to be a servant girl who took care of brushes and ink. I can read and write. Fu Shui. What, you don't want to? Pang Xiao frowned in distress. I don't like to read, so I don't need a servant girl who takes care of brushes and ink. I already have many beauties serving me. As he spoke, he put his arm around Qin Yining's waist. I'm lacking a servant girl. If you don't want to, it's fine. I'll order someone to send you back to Caixiang Pavilion and have Yu Chang return the money to me. Young master, don't. Fu Shui was so scared that she knelt down with a flop. She cried and said bitterly, I didn't say I don't want to. I'll do whatever you ask. As long as I can follow you and serve you, I'm willing to do anything. Pang Xiao nodded with satisfaction, kissed Qin Yining, and introduced, this is Mrs. Ning, the master of the boat. Fu Shui then turned her eyes from Pang Xiao to Qin Yining. Her pupils suddenly shrank when she saw her. Her smile stiffened, and she reluctantly saluted, Nice to meet you, Mrs. Ning. Qin Yining leaned against Pang Xiao's arms as if she had no bones, and squeezed out a snort from her nose. Humph. Fu Shui gritted her teeth and lowered her head. Pang Xiao was almost amused by Qin Yining's snort. He kept repeating in his heart, how can my sister Yi be so cute? How can she be so cute? He was afraid that he would laugh out loud if he stayed any longer, so he hurriedly took Qin Yining into the cabin and casually said. Chapter 859. Bing Tang and Ji Yun had been watching Pang Xiao's performance in silence. They saw Fu Shui's performance clearly and were annoyed. After receiving the order, the two naturally didn't bother to make arrangements. They had seen too many people like Fu Shui who wanted to climb up the social ladder. Maybe the young master of the Lu family sold her because of this. Bing Tang said angrily, come with me. Fu Shui hadn't recovered her attention from the young master. Hearing the voice, she reluctantly looked over. The two maidservants in front of her, one tall and the other short, were nearly 20 years old, and their skin was dark. No matter how beautiful their facial features were, they didn't look good on such dull faces. Fu Shui had a plan in her mind. Fu Shui smiled and saluted to the two. "Hello, sisters. May I know how to address you?" Bing Tang said, "You flatter me. I'm Little Hong, and that's Little Green. We serve Mrs. Ning. Come with me." She turned around and walked to the servants' room at the back of the boat. Fu Shui didn't expect that Little Red and Little Green were so unfriendly. On second thought, Mrs. Ning named her personal maid so crudely. She thought that Mrs. Ning must be illiterate and only had a beautiful face. Such a woman was just comfortable to look at for a while. Her opponent was such a person. Fu Shui's confidence that had been hit just now came back. When they arrived at the servants' room, Bing Tang arranged a room for her in the corner, the same room as the cook. Fu Shui looked at the narrow cabin and was dissatisfied. But she didn't dare to say more. There was a narrow bed on both sides of the room, a corridor in the middle, and a small flat window facing the door. If she didn't listen, she couldn't even hide her fart. How could she live here? "Well, are you not satisfied?" Bing Tang curled her lips and said, "Remember your identity. You were bought by my young master to do manual labor. You can only live in such a cabin. There are few rooms on the gala painting boat. This is good enough. Otherwise, I'll arrange a bed for you. Do you want to go?" Fu Shui hurriedly shook her head and waved her hands. "Sister Xiao Hong, please don't be angry. How would I dare to be dissatisfied? I will listen to sister's orders." Bing Tang glared at her and turned to go out, leaving Fu Shui sitting on the edge of the bed sulking. Back in the cabin, Ji Yun couldn't hold back her laughter. She pinched Bing Tang's face and said, "Little Red, Little Green? This name of yours is too casual. Aren't you afraid that those ignorant people will doubt Master's ability to name things?" You didn't see her eyes. The moment she saw Wang, young Master, it was as if she had eaten bee shit. She couldn't wait to hang her eyes on the young Master and looked down on Mrs. Ning. Who was she? Did she deserve to be married? Bah. Ji Yun was calmer than Bing Tang and said, "But Master also calls us by our real names outside. It's not good for that girl to know. Although she has the intention of seducing young Master, it's her fault, but we can't act on our own and ruin Master's plans." Bing Tang took a few deep breaths and said, "I know. It's okay. The people on the ship are all young Master's people. Later, let Huzi give the order and we will tell Master. Even if she knows that I lied to her, it's okay. At most, she will misunderstand that I didn't care about her and deliberately coax her." Ji Yun thought about it and said, "That's right. Anyway, she is under our eyes. She can't do anything." The two returned to the cabin and went to meet Pang Xiao and Qin Yining. Qin Yining couldn't help laughing when he heard it. "I know. I will be careful in front of her in the future. But this is also good. You can deliberately give her some information in the future. For example, I am a skinny horse that Master bought outside and became a concubine. The old lady at home doesn't like me and has already discussed the matter of young Master's second wife." Pang Xiao pinched Qin Yining's face and said, "Don't talk nonsense. What second wife? Hurry up and take a few bites." "Stop talking nonsense." Qin Yining covered his face and laughed. "This is also nonsense. I am just testing his character. I think this woman is not a well-behaved person. If she can still be well-behaved after giving her some information, I will make good arrangements for the rest of her life so that she will not have to worry about food and clothing." The few of them understood Qin Yining's unfinished words. If this woman did something overboard, then she could only bear the consequences and couldn't blame anyone. Bing Tang thought for a while and said, "That's good too. Since I've already played the role of the good guy, I'll let Yuan Yun play the role of the good guy." Ji Yun smiled and glared at Bing Tang. "You really know how to do it. You annoy her, but don't I annoy her?" Bing Tang chuckled and said, "Good sister, who asked you to be more mature than me? You are the most suitable to play the good cop." Qin Yining and Pang Xiao laughed as they watched from the side. After Ji Yun and Bing Tang left, Qin Yining turned to Pang Xiao and said, What do you plan to do next? Pang Xiao chuckled and leaned close to Qin Yining to bite her lips. Haven't you already thought of it? Why are you still asking me? Qin Yining blushed at his actions and pushed him away. Stop fooling around. We are talking about serious matters. What can be more serious than this? Pang Xiao scooped Qin Yining up with his big hands and strode towards the bedroom. Even if Qin Yining had thousands of calculations in her mind, she couldn't care less at the moment. The next morning, before dawn, there was a layer of fog on the surface of the jade-green lake. Not to mention the boats in the distance, even the nearby shore couldn't be seen clearly. But on the surface, she sighed with emotion, so powerful. The master of the WN family must be very powerful. Yes. Ji Yun saw that she took the bait and began to talk nonsense. Our master is very good at doing business. It is said that he has many friends in the imperial court. Eldest young master is the master's favorite and is the eldest son of the first wife. In the future, the family business will be passed to our eldest young master. Eldest young master is good in everything, but eldest young madam has a hard life. She died early without leaving a son or a daughter. Before we came out, the master and madam were arranging for the eldest young master to remarry. Fu Shue's heart skipped a beat. So that person was going to remarry. She was trembling with excitement. After a while, she said, "What about Mrs. Ning? I see that the eldest young master dotes on Mrs. Ning very much. If the eldest young master remarries, Mrs. Ning must be the first choice, right?" Ji Yun said. Seeing that she seemed to have something to say, Fu Shui held Ji Yun's arm and begged, "Sister Xiaolu, please tell me. I just came to the manor and know nothing about it. I am afraid that I will go the wrong way in the future." "Don't worry. I will never let a third person know what you said." Ji Yun frowned and said in a low voice, "Originally, we servants shouldn't say this, but I see that you and I hit it off very well. Forget it, I'll tell you, but you can't say it out loud." Fu Shui nodded quickly. "Sister, don't worry." Ji Yun said slowly. "Mrs. Ning is actually a thin horse given to the young master by his friend. The master and madam will choose a wife for the young master's second wife. Naturally, they will choose a wife of equal social status. At least, she must have a clean background. Although Mrs. Ning is beautiful, she may not be qualified. What about the young master? The eldest young master likes Mrs. Ning. But the master and madam love their son very much. So, they must agree. Well, you don't know. For a big family like the WN family, the superiors are too lazy to care about concubines and Tongfang. But the madam of the clan won't mess around. I don't think Mrs. Ning has much chance. But the eldest young master really dotes on Mrs. Ning now. Mrs. Ning will definitely be a concubine in the future." Fu Shui was happy in her heart. It turned out that Mrs. Ning didn't even have the chance to be a concubine. No wonder they all called her wife instead of concubine. Chapter 860. Fu Shui had a plan in mind, and her footsteps became lighter. Ji Yun said that she was out shopping, so the two of them naturally went to the busiest street. Fu Shui coaxed Ji Yun to try a lot of local snacks. Ji Yun naturally couldn't eat alone, so she had to bring Fu Shui along. Fu Shui ate happily, as if her mouth was smeared with honey. She even coaxed Ji Yun to try the latest fresh flower rouge in the rouge shop. Ji Yun's heart was like a mirror, and she had already seen through this woman's character. However, because it was Qin Yining's order, she naturally had to cooperate with the act and continue to let Fu Shui take advantage of her. At the same time, Pang Xiao and Qin Yining were playing chess on the pleasure boat when they heard a noise coming from the shore. Pang Xiao listened attentively, put down a white chess piece, and said with a smile, "The people we are waiting for are here." Qin Yining put the chess pieces back into the chess basket, stood up, and straightened his sleeves. "Bing Tang, bring me the rouge." Then he turned to Pang Xiao and said, "Come back later and continue playing." Pang Xiao nodded with a smile. "Okay." Bing Tang brought the rouge box, and Qin Yining quickly applied red lips, changed into a very eye-catching magenta gown, and put a pink and white palace flower in her hair. Pang Xiao crossed his legs and said with a smile, From a fairy in heaven to a flower in the human world, it's like a painting. Qin Yining couldn't help but laugh when he heard that. He rolled his eyes at Pang Xiao and pointed to the shore, which was getting more and more lively. Why don't you go out and take a look? This time, they are really fighting. Let them fight. It's better if they fight. Pang Xiao smiled. What we want is to make a big deal out of it. Otherwise, how will the Lu family know? Qin Yining smiled and said, "You are getting worse and worse." Pang Xiao saw her smile, and he also smiled. When the two of them came to the deck, the quarrel on the shore became clearer. If you know what's good for you, release Fu Shui. You know who I am. I am Fu Shui's fiancé. Lu Shi's face was full of anger. With one hand on his waist and the other pointing at the ship, he cursed loudly. Huzi and the two Jinghu Wei stood in front of the footboard, their faces dark. If it weren't for Wang Yi's orders, they would have thrown him out long ago. Lu Shi looked inside and saw a man and a woman dressed in gold and silver. He immediately knew that the master had come. It took him a lot of effort to control his emotions and said loudly, "This young master looks unfamiliar. You must be a foreigner." Pang Xiao snorted and looked at him from the corner of his eyes. "Temph, so what if I am?" Lu Shi had seen a lot of the world with Lu Zheng. Seeing Pang Xiao speak like this, he had a good idea of the other party. He immediately cupped his hands in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. "I think this young master doesn't know much about Danju City. But even if you don't know much about Danju City, you should have heard of the Lu family." Pang Xiao pretended to be surprised. "The Lu family?" "Yes." Lu Shi saw that the person in front of him seemed to be afraid. He couldn't help but laugh softly. "This one is not talented, but I am a member of the Lu family. Miss Fu Shui, who you bought on the ship yesterday, is this one's future wife. How much gold and silver did you use? I will return it all. I hope that this young master can give me some face and let them go." Lu Shi didn't make a fuss. When he spoke reason, he did show some magnanimity. It could be seen that this person was really anxious just now and had deep feelings for Fu Shui. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining looked at each other. Pang Xiao sneered, "Oh, who are you? Can you represent the Lu Men family?" Lu Shi choked. He was a bit unwilling, but he still smiled and said, "This one is the right-hand man of the Lu family's eldest young master. If you are willing to give me Fu Shui's body, we can be considered friends." At this point, Lu Shi suddenly changed the topic. "If you don't agree, then don't blame me for going back to my young master." "How dare you? Who do you think you are? How dare you threaten this young master? My WN family has never been scared by anyone for several generations." Pang Xiao stomped his foot and said angrily, "Arrest this bold servant who uses his master's power to flaunt outside." Yes. Huzi and the Jinghu Wei seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. They were very excited in an instant and went forward to tie Lu Shi up. They carried him directly onto the ship and threw him on the deck. Lu Shi had always been proud of being the eldest young master of the Lu family. When he was outside, as long as he showed this identity, no one would give him any face. But now, this bumpkin from outside the city had directly ordered him to be arrested. Lu Shi was unable to restrain his anger and scolded, "Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. You are treating me like this now. If my young master knows, he will come back and take your life. He will destroy your family. If you obediently hand over Fu Shui now, I can still say a few good words for you in front of my young master. Otherwise, you just wait and see." Pang Xiao was so angry that he stomped his feet and scolded, "There is actually a slave who dares to spout such arrogant words. Lock this killer up for this young master and shut his mouth, so that he won't spout shit." "Yes." Huzi immediately went to find a piece of cotton cloth and stuffed it into Lu Shi's mouth. Then he carried him into the cabin. Lu Shi had lost the chance to speak before he finished his threat. He was flustered. Where did this hothead come from? He didn't even care about the Lu family's face and dared to arrest him. This person didn't want to live anymore. But on second thought, now that he was in the other party's hands, if this hothead really did something to him, he would be dead before his young master came to find him. Wouldn't that be a loss for him? Thinking of this, Lu Shi stopped struggling and whining. He was as quiet as a dead chicken. Pang Xiao pointed to a room next to the parlor. Huzi understood, threw him in, and closed the door. Jinghu Wei and Huzi deliberately stepped out of the door with heavy footsteps. Bing Tang also stood in the corner under Qin Yining's signal. Pang Xiao pulled Qin Yining into his arms and kissed him loudly. "Ayo, my darling, you're asking for my life. I didn't serve you well last night, Chem?" Qin Yining saw Pang Xiao saying vulgar things with a straight face and was both amused and annoyed. He played along and said, "Young master, you're coaxing me again. Now you say I'm your darling, but then you fall in love with someone else. I'm like a kitten or a puppy that young master likes. You only touch me when you like me. Nonsense." Pang Xiao smiled and pinched Qin Yining's buttocks. Qin Yining exclaimed, "Young master only touches you, Chem? You said young master treats you like a kitten or a puppy. Young master has no interest in kittens or puppies. Also, he brought you along to discuss business this time. Since when did young master fall in love with someone else? You little vinegar jar." "No," Qin Yining said coquettishly. "Didn't you take a fancy to that girl yesterday?" "Of course not." Pang Xiao's voice turned cold and he reprimanded, "If you're jealous again, I'll send you home." Qin Yining heard this and immediately whimpered, "Young master is a bully. Young master loves every girl he sees and is so fierce to them. You might as well not enter their house in the future." She pretended to cry and made a face at Pang Xiao. Then she turned and ran back to the bedroom. Pang Xiao almost laughed out loud. He coughed and scolded, "This little hussy, you've spoiled her." Bing Tang snickered in the corner and also walked back to the bedroom. Lu Shi, who was separated by a wooden wall, heard everything clearly in the front hall. He had already cursed countless times in his heart. Not long after, footsteps came from the deck, followed by a familiar female voice. "Young master, this servant is here to bring you tea and snacks." "It's Fu Shui." Lu Shi was overjoyed and hurriedly moved towards the door. At this time, Fu Shui had walked to Pang Xiao with a black tray and put down the snacks and hot tea gently. She and Little Green just came back and heard that the young master quarreled with Mrs. Ning. Little Green hurried back to Mrs. Ning with the snacks and served her, and she came here. She would never let go of any chance to climb up. How could she let go of such a good opportunity? "Young master, please have some tea." Pang Xiao was thinking with a dark face. Hearing this, he came to himself and took over the tea bowl. His fingers accidentally touched Fu Shui's fingertips. Fu Shui's heart thumped and her face turned red. She said in a trembling voice, "Young master, don't be sad. Mrs. Ning didn't mean to make you angry." She changed her mind in a flash. Pang Xiao drank a mouthful of tea and put down the teacup. He said, "Her temperament is because I have spoiled her. If she was half as sensible as you, how much less would I be angry with her? No, I'm stupid. I can't compare with Mrs. Ning." Pang Xiao snorted in his heart, "You can't compare with her. You can't even compare with my sister Yi's toenails." But Pang Xiao looked very moved. "You come from a big family and you can read." He was also literate, so naturally he was different from those people who couldn't read a basket full of characters. "Moreover, you are so outstanding. Yesterday at the cherished fragrance pavilion, I saw you at first glance." She knew that if he didn't like her, who would spend so much money just to buy a servant girl? Thinking of this, Fu Shui was more sure that Pang Xiao didn't want to show his intimacy to her in front of Mrs. Ning. Fu Shui was proud in her heart, but she looked shy. "I'm not as outstanding as you said. I'm just a poor person." Pang Xiao held his chin and said, "In fact, I heard a lot of rumors these days. Many people said that the young master of the Lu family sold a servant girl to the brothel. Are they talking about you?" Fu Shui's face turned pale. She blinked quickly and said with grievance, "Young master WN seems to be talking about me. However, this servant also has her own difficulties." Next door, Lu Shi was shocked by Fu Shui's soft voice. Hearing this, he immediately suppressed his anger and listened attentively. Because the young master insisted on selling Fu Shui to the fragrance pavilion, he asked many times but failed to get the reason, so he was confused. After that, he sent me to the cherishing fragrance pavilion. Woo woo woo. Fu Shui cried and leaned on Pang Xiao weakly. Pang Xiao did not dodge or move. Fu Shui was overjoyed. She hugged Pang Xiao's arm and cried. Next door, Lu Shi was stunned. He was not a fool. These days, he saw the young master's hesitant expression when he saw him. He also heard Fu Shui crying in front of him and distorting the truth just now. And listening to the conversation outside, Fu Shui was obviously flattering young Master Wn. The eldest young master was right, this was a fickle woman. She obviously looked down on him because he was a servant, but she seduced him. How stupid was he to be seduced by her? He even resented the young master for selling his fiancée. When he was living on the streets, it was the young master who picked him up. He fed him, clothed him, and even took him to study with him. He promoted him to be a servant and treated him as a confidant. In private, he trusted him more than his own brother. When his fiancée seduced the young master couldn't directly say it in front of her. Was it to save his face? Lu Shi's tears burst out of her eyes, and she began to sob. Pang Xiao heard the crying next door and pushed Fu Shui away impatiently. He didn't mind adding more wood to the fire. Fu Shui, when you went to the young master to reason with him, did you also lean on a man and cry like this, huh? Fu Shui stared blankly at Pang Xiao with tears on her pink cheeks. Pang Xiao said, I just bought you and you can slander your former master in front of me. You even threw yourself at me. But after a little test, you gave yourself away. I've seen a lot of women like you who want to climb up the ladder. Go down. You don't need to serve here. Fu Shui stared blankly at the handsome man in front of her, but found that this person had a pair of sharp eyes, as if he could see straight into her heart. Why did she think that the person in front of her was an idiot? This person had been testing her all along. Fu Shui took 2 steps back. She wanted to argue but didn't dare to. She just bowed out of instinct and ran away. Pang Xiao leaned against the armrest of the armchair. He covered his mouth and yawned in boredom. Then he looked back at the cubicle. The suppressed crying was more obvious. He still had some sympathy for Lu Shi. If it was him, the woman he loved would act one way in front of him and another behind his back. She seduced him on the surface but disliked him on the inside. She even used him. He would definitely kill her. Fortunately, his sister Yi was loyal to him and never made him sad. Instead, he was the one who hurt her every time. When Pang Xiao thought of Qin Yining, his heart was full of softness and love. He thought of the way she cooperated with him just now, which was something he would never see on a normal day. He missed her so much that he felt like a cat was scratching his heart. Pang Xiao didn't care about Lu Shi, who was crying alone. He strode back to the bedroom to find Qin Yining. At this time, Qin Yining was drawing flowers with Bing Tang and Ji Yun. He heard from Ji Yun that she took Fu Shui out. That Fu Shui's character is really unreliable. She's very good at talking and is good at finding out information. Unfortunately, she thinks she's smart and always treats others as fools. Other than flattering people, she doesn't have any other tricks to deceive people. She's also very greedy. She wants to try everything she sees. She wants to buy more of everything to bring back. Ji Yun shook her head and said, the Lu family actually has such a servant girl. It seems like 100 different kinds of people can be raised from the same rice. Bing Tang clicked his tongue and said, with such a character, maybe the young master didn't wrong her after selling her. Pang Xiao walked to the door and happened to hear this. He smiled and said, you're right. This person wasn't wronged. Master. Bing Tang and Ji Yun both stood up and bowed. Qin Yining raised his head and smiled. How is it? What did you find out? There's nothing strange. Just like what we guessed before, in order to climb up the social ladder, she seduced the young master's manservant and the head housekeeper's son. She then went back to flatter the young master. In the end, young Master Lu didn't fall for her tricks. He saw through her nature and sold her. I think young Master Lu was also angry. He kindly chose a wife for his close aide, but it turned out to be such a person. He couldn't directly tell his brother that his fiancée came to seduce him. Qin Yining shook his head and couldn't help but sigh. She's so young. Of all the things she could do, she just had to take things too hard. If there's a flaw in her character, wouldn't her life be ruined? That's right. Pang Xiao also said, as a person, the most important thing is one's character and bottom line. If one's character is good, there might be a time when there's a light at the end of the tunnel. If one does something immoral, there will be a day when one's success will be reversed. Qin Yining said, let's teach Brother Zhao and Brother Han. In the future, we have to prioritize character. They don't have to have any talent, but they must be good people. In the future, when there's an opportunity, let my father teach the two children. I don't expect them to pass the imperial examinations in the future, but they must be upright and upright. Pang Xiao nodded in agreement. Father-in-law has outstanding talent and great wisdom. I'll teach the children how to arrange troops. In the future, I'll let Mewtwo teach the children martial arts. Then, I'll ask father-in-law to come out and teach them literature and how to conduct themselves. Hey, do you think our children won't become pillars when they grow up? Qin Yining narrowed his eyes and smiled. Of course it's good to let young Master Mu teach them. But there's one thing. Don't let Tian Jizhi get close to my son, lest she lead him astray. Pang Xiao burst out in laughter. Tian Jizhi was still locked up at this time. It was unknown if she had remembered this lesson. As the two chatted, the topic naturally turned to their own home. Bing Tang and Ji Yun, who were guarding the door, couldn't help but laugh. When Wang Fei and Wang Yi were together, it was like the two of them had become children. Qin Yining thought and said, I see that the eldest young master of the Lu family is very concerned about his attendant. Maybe he'll come to find him later. We should also make preparations in advance. Don't worry. I've already given the order. I will protect you when the time comes. Qin Yining smiled and nodded. I know. Of course it's the safest to be with you. Her eyes curved into crescents because of her smile. When she looked at him, she was so gentle that it was like his heart was soaked in a hot spring. After experiencing so many hardships and suffering so much, she still trusted him. Pang Xiao was moved and grateful. He couldn't help but hold her tightly in his arms and kiss her forehead sincerely. He couldn't say such mushy words. But he couldn't help murmuring, I'm so lucky to have you repeatedly in his heart. Qin Yining smiled and hugged Pang Xiao's waist. Me too. I'm so lucky to have you. The two quietly hugged each other. Even Ji Yun and Bing Tang in front of the door didn't dare to breathe loudly for fear of disturbing this peaceful scene. Who knew that at this time, there was a burst of hurried footsteps on the deck. Huzi ran in with large strides and said loudly, Young master, it's not good. Someone is causing trouble below. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining suddenly separated. They looked at each other and said in a low voice at the same time, They're here. Pang Xiao pulled Qin Yining up and led the others onto the deck. At this time, the curtain of night had fallen. Lanterns were hung on the ship and the lake reflected colorful lights. Chapter 862. The passers-by near the dock had all left. Even the boatmen on the nearby boats had hidden away. It was so quiet that not even a bird could be seen. Pang Xiao withdrew his gaze from sizing up the surroundings, and carefully sized up the guards and servants that the other party had brought with him. He had an idea in his heart, so he cleared his throat and deliberately put on a fierce front. Who are you? Why are you standing in front of this young master's pleasure boat? Brother, may I ask if a young man named Lu Shi came to this brother's boat today? Pang Xiao straightened his neck and hugged Qin Yining's waist. He raised his chin and said, So what if there is and so what if there isn't? That dog dared to behave atrociously in front of this young master. Naturally, this young master caught him. Lu Zheng's face darkened. This humble one is Lu Zheng, the eldest son of the Lu family. Lu Shi is this humble one's attendant. Since this brother admits to catching Lu Shi, it's better if you let him go. It will save both of us the trouble, otherwise. He didn't finish his words, but the threat was obvious. Pang Xiao waved his hand at Huzi behind his back. Huzi and the other Jinghu Wei, who were originally tense and ready to attack at any time, understood. Although they were unwilling, they acted like frightened birds. They trembled and looked at each other as if they were afraid of the other party's numbers. So what if you're the eldest son of the Lu family? Pang Xiao shouted. Do you know who I am? I'm the eldest son of the WN family of Guangdong. I represent the WN family to discuss business with the Lu family. It's good that you're the young master of the Lu family. I'm your big client. Your servant came to make a fuss in front of me and even flaunted his status as a young master. It's already good that I didn't send him to the authorities. You can have him, but shouldn't you compensate me? My beauty was frightened by your servant. He looked as if Lu Zheng didn't back down, the business discussion wouldn't go on. Lu Zheng was so angry that he laughed. So this idiot was sent by the Guangdong to discuss business. Could it be that everyone on the Guangdong ship had died? They actually sent such a thing over. Lu Zheng couldn't help but look at Pang Xiao from head to toe. He was just an embroidered pillow. This was the first time he saw someone who dared to stand tall in front of the Lu family. He didn't know when or how he would die. Lu Zheng's heart skipped a beat when he turned his head and saw the woman's face in the idiot's arms. His mind went blank for a moment. The woman's exquisite features seemed to have been carved out of a piece of white jade. Even the best craftsman would not be able to carve out such a perfect appearance. Coupled with her delicate features and watery eyes, she shyly leaned into the embrace of the WN family's young master. Her timid appearance was truly frightening. At that moment, Lu Zheng's by the books is. How could such a stunning beauty be given to such an idiot? He had really tarnished it. By the heavens God, and now the heavens be. How do you want to be compensated? Lu Zheng's voice was cold. Pang Xiao's eyes glinted with greed. You want to give me money? I don't want too much, so as to avoid making things difficult for you. How about 10 million taels of silver? Lu Zheng almost rolled his eyes. How could such a mediocre person represent the WAN family? He really doubted the Guangdong's ability now. Such a family, let alone buying an imperial envoy, even if they bought all the local officials, their business would go bankrupt sooner or later. Lu Zheng swung his sleeves and put his hands behind his back. 10 million taels isn't much. Isn't that so? Your family is big. 10 million taels is like plucking a strand of hair. Yesterday, my beauty was scared to tears by that boorish fellow. She cried until my heart ached. 10 million taels of silver to buy 2 sets of head ornaments for her, and also to give me, this young master, some tonics to eat. It's not too much. Lu Zheng smiled. Such a beautiful woman is indeed worthy of 10 million taels of head ornaments. But you. That beauty isn't mine. Why should I pay? There was a man standing beside Lu Zheng who had no doubts. The man had a mustache and his eyes were fixed on Qi Nining. When he heard this, it was as if his pressure points had been released. That's right. My young master bought that woman for 10 million taels. You've made a big profit. Send Lu Shi back and we'll write off the debt between us. Young master WAN, you must think carefully. Such a good thing doesn't happen all the time. If you anger my young master, you might lose both your money and your life. Pang Xiao was instantly enraged. He suppressed his anger and warned himself not to ruin the big picture. That was why he didn't rush up and kill. I'm not selling the beauty. I haven't played enough. Pang Xiao crossed his arms and said, if you are willing to pay 10 million taels of silver to redeem him, then you can take back that useless servant. If not, then forget it. It's good that the officials say this. Huzi and Bing Tang were already furious when they saw someone coveting the princess consort. They immediately stood up to help. That's right. In the end, our young master went to drink with prostitutes and redeemed a girl. That's our business. But someone came out and claimed to be that girl's fiancé. Not only did he not pay, he also asked us to hand her over. He also spoke ill of our young master. Is it wrong for our young master to arrest him and send him to the officials? Pang Xiao acted like an idiot. He jumped up and echoed, that's right. Is it wrong? Lu Zheng suddenly smiled. Where do you think this is? A place to reason with you? You can ask where the government office's door opens. He seemed to have lost his patience and waved his hand behind him. The 50 to 60 bodyguards who came with him rushed onto the boat like a swarm of bees. "Get out of the way! Squat down and don't move. Otherwise, I'll throw you all into Beaching Lake." The group of people barged around, causing the cooks and boatmen on the boat to scream in fear. In the dark night, the screams from the dock could be heard from afar as if a huge tragedy had happened. Pang Xiao gestured to Huzi from behind, indicating that he and the others should not fight back. Huzi understood and acted like cowards with Jinghu Wei. They also shouted, "Spare us." For a moment, the boat was in chaos. Pang Xiao hugged Qin Yining tightly and acted like he was scared out of his wits. He fell to the ground and shouted, "What are you doing? Are you trying to rob us? Did the Lu family become rich by robbing? I'm afraid you're not an imposter. Do you think the young master of the Lu family knows how to rob? Is there any justice in this world? I spent money to redeem him and you all want to rob him? Do you have any shame?" When Qin Yining heard Pang Xiao's words, he almost laughed out loud. Pang Xiao was such a good actor. Did he also act like a shrew in the imperial court? Was Li Qitian so angry that he almost vomited blood? Qin Yining didn't know what happened in the past. Anyway, Lu Zheng's face was pale with anger. "Shut up. If you talk nonsense again, I'll throw you into the lake to feed the fish." Pang Xiao immediately shut his mouth and cowered to his heart's content. The boat was only so big. Soon, someone found Lu Shi and Fu Shui from the cabin. Lu Shi's tears were still wet. There were no obvious injuries on his body, but he looked much more haggard. Lu Zheng frowned and immediately ordered, "Hurry up and untie him." The middle-aged man who spoke for Lu Zheng immediately went forward and untied Lu Shi. Lu Shi raised his head and said absent-mindedly, "Shopkeeper Yuan, thank you very much. Get up quickly. Young master knew you didn't return home after you came out. He was so worried that he brought people to look for you." Manager Yuan sighed. Lu Shi got up and kowtowed to Lu Zheng with regret, "Young master, it's my fault. I didn't know what was good for me. It's my fault. After knowing the truth, he was deeply hurt. He now understood Lu Zheng's painstaking efforts and why Fu Shui played him and used him like this. Regret, self-blame, anger, sadness, all kinds of emotions mixed together. Lu Shi burst into tears and cried uncontrollably on the ground. Lu Zheng didn't understand what was going on. He felt sad when he saw Lu Shi crying so sadly. He quickly helped him up and said, "Okay, let's go back and talk about it. These people dared to imprison you. I must teach them a lesson." Lu Zheng looked at Pang Xiao, who was still sitting on the ground and seemed to be unable to stand up. He sneered, "Take these people to the county prison and lock them up." "Yes." Grand Shopkeeper Yuan responded immediately. He hurriedly ordered his men to arrest all the people on the pleasure boat, and even followed them out. Pang Xiao didn't resist at all. She was so scared that she almost peed in her pants. Maybe she was too frightened or something else, she didn't want to let go of Qin Yining's hand, like a drowning person holding on to a piece of driftwood. Manager Yuan tried to pull Qin Yining away several times but failed. He secretly cursed Qin Yining for being such a pervert. He still didn't forget to hold the beauty at this time. The beauty was frightened. Her appearance of burying her head in the ground and sobbing really made people feel pity for her. Shopkeeper Yuan felt so sorry for her that his heart was almost broken. The family servants and guards arrested all the people on the Pang Xiao pleasure boat. They did not try to avoid the people, but went to the county Yamen prison in a grandiose manner. The residents who heard the commotion along the street could not help but push open their windows a little to look outside. On the dock, Fu Shui knelt on the ground and kowtowed in the night wind, "Young master, please forgive me. I know I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. I won't do it again." Lu Zheng didn't look at her and called Lu Shi, "Let's go back." "Yes." Lu Shi followed Lu Zheng and didn't look at Fu Shui again. Fu Shui knelt on the ground in a daze. She looked at the backs of the two in confusion. "Did young master let her go?" Lu Zheng asked Lu Shi, "What happened? How did you get caught all of a sudden?" Lu Shi's face was full of shame. He told the story objectively. After pondering for a moment, he said, Chapter 863. Lu Zhang recalled the scene just now and couldn't help but sneer. What? That person is just a useless piece of trash. Did you see anything? Lu Shi said, when I was caught, I wasn't locked in a corner or a warehouse. Instead, I was locked in a small room next to the flower hall. That was strange enough. Although he teased Fu Shui, he was mostly leading her to talk. In order to seduce him, Fu Shui said all kinds of things she shouldn't say. In the end, she even threw herself into his arms. However, young Master Wan didn't take the bait. He even scolded her. Lu Zheng paused and whispered, You know everything? Yes, young master. I misunderstood you earlier. You've gone through a lot of trouble for me. It's my fault. Lu Shi pursed his lips in regret and took a deep breath. It's all thanks to that young Master Wan that I was able to see Fu Shui's character. So I guess young Master Wan knows that I'm your servant. That's why he purposely showed off in order to gain some benefits and make it easier to talk business in the future. After all, it wasn't convenient for Lu Zheng to talk about this kind of thing. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, Lu Shi wouldn't believe it either. With this matter, Lu Zheng's dilemma was solved and the gap between the master and servant was completely eliminated. Lu Zheng couldn't help but think, how can that mediocre person be so smart? No matter how he thought about it, it didn't seem like it. It's probably a blind cat running into a dead mouse. Lu Shi thought for a moment, it could be a coincidence. Just by looking at his absurdity, this person isn't outstanding. Young master wants to talk business with the Wan family. I'm afraid you'll have to retest what kind of family the Wan family is. Lu Zheng smiled, it doesn't matter what kind of family they are. We're only in charge of doing business. What does their life and death have to do with us? That's true. Lu Shi couldn't help but smile. He followed Lu Zheng back to the manor in the night. The relationship between the master and servant for many years didn't decrease after this incident. Instead, it deepened. As for Fu Shui, who was left at the dock, the two tacitly didn't mention her. Fu Shui's character wasn't good. She used Lu Shi and was fickle. She even tried to climb into Lu Zheng's bed. But in the end, there was no need to take Fu Shui's life for these things. Selling her to the brothel was the result of Lu Zheng's anger. His main purpose was to prevent Lu Shi from marrying such a woman. Now that Lu Shi had seen through Fu Shui's character, Lu Zheng's purpose had been achieved. He was too lazy to care about a little girl. As for the fact that this woman had been redeemed by the Wan clan's young master, she was most likely a servant of the Wan clan. If Lu Zheng ignored her, there was a high chance that she would escape. Lu Shi didn't want to kill Fu Shui. He just didn't want to have anything to do with her anymore. In the county jail of Danju Prefecture, walking at the end of the line with his hands folded, Grand Tavern Keeper Yuan watched the guards of the Lu clan and the jailers exchange tasks. The jailer was a burly man in his early 40s. He had been yawning in dissatisfaction when he was woken up in the middle of the night, but when he saw Great Shopkeeper Yuan, he immediately became energetic. So it's Great Shopkeeper Yuan. Does young Master Lu have any orders? Do you want me to entertain this group of insensible people? Great Shopkeeper Yuan smiled. These people offended young Master, but young Master is merciful and didn't order to punish them. But I personally think that although he didn't punish them, these people are really too hateful. Yes. Now that you've put it that way, I immediately understand. Just wait and see. Although he didn't punish them, he won't let them off easily. You're a sensible man. Great Shopkeeper Yuan patted the jailer's shoulder. By the way, there's a stunning beauty in there. That person can't be touched. Do you understand? The jailer's face turned cold. He nodded repeatedly and patted his chest to assure, don't worry, I'm not that kind of person. Young Master Lu, I definitely don't dare to touch her. Then he leaned closer to Great Shopkeeper Yuan, raised his thick eyebrows, and said sneakily, that beauty is young Master Lu, or you, hey. Great Shopkeeper Yuan laughed. Don't ask. Oh. Don't worry. Now that the jailer knew what was going on, he couldn't help but feel a little curious. Great shopkeeper Yuan was a favorite of young Master Lu. He was in the prime of his life and had a promising future. What kind of beauty couldn't he want? He had never seen great shopkeeper Yuan deliberately take care of anyone before. If young Master Lu had taken a fancy to a beauty, he could have gotten her with just a wave of his finger. Why would he send her to prison? Therefore, this woman might not have been taken a fancy by young Master Lu, but by Yuan Yujiang himself. He wanted to see what kind of stunning beauty she was. The jailer blew his nose outside the door, wiped his hand on the bottom of his trousers, and strode into the prison. Great shopkeeper Yuan curled his lips as he watched. He stood where he was with his hands folded, not leaving immediately. Qin Yining was held in Pang Xiao's arms, and they stepped into the dark and damp corridor side by side. The air was damp and moldy, accompanied by an unknown stench. There were prisoners in the cells on both sides, and men and women were mixed together. Seeing that there were newcomers, pairs of dirty and skinny hands reached out of the wooden bars, making threatening gestures like ghost claws. Many people were wailing, "We've been wronged." The kitchen maid and the kitchen maid who came with them were so scared that their faces turned pale, and they screamed again and again. Pang Xiao held Qin Yining's shoulder with his big hands, and whispered in her ear, "Don't be afraid." "I'm not afraid." "What's there to be afraid of?" Qin Yining whispered back. "Hurry up and go. What are you waiting for?" The jailer scolded and gave Pang Xiao a hard push. Who would have thought that this push didn't cause Pang Xiao to fall down as he had expected? Instead, the jailer's own finger rubbed against Pang Xiao's shoulder. The pain made him suck in a breath of cold air. Pang Xiao ignored the people behind him, and walked straight ahead with Qin Yining in his arms. At the end of the corridor, there was a small window on the wall, and a strong wooden bar was nailed to it. There was a torch stuck in the bottom. Turning left, they saw a row of empty cells. The jailer pointed to the first cell. "You guys, go in." Huzi, a few Jinghu Wei, and the boatman on the boat obediently walked in. In the second cell, the jailer pushed the kitchen maid, Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and the other women, "Go in, go in." He then went to pull Qin Yining. Pang Xiao raised his arm and blocked the jailer's hand. "Who are you to touch my woman? Hey, where do you think this is? You're already in prison, and you still dare to stick out your waist in front of me. This woman is your woman, and I'll take good care of her later. You." The jailer raised his hand to grab Qin Yining's hand. Qin Yining felt a strong sense of malice, and she looked back coldly at the jailer. Her face turned cold, and her eyes were as sharp as a bird of prey. She was beautiful, but it made the jailer stop in his tracks, and the words he was about to say were suddenly stuck in his throat. Did he encounter some kind of demon? The female ghosts and demons that the storyteller spoke of were all like this. They looked like beauties, but when they turned around, they wanted to eat people. Pang Xiao originally had a stomach full of anger, but when he saw his wife stare at the jailer, who was courting death, he immediately felt better. Sister Yi was soft and obedient in front of him, like a little white rabbit, but she was always so fierce in front of outsiders. With such a strong contrast in treatment, as long as he thought about how Qin Yining cared about him, no matter how bad his mood was, it would immediately improve. While the jailer was still in a daze, Pang Xiao and Qin Yining had already entered the same cell. The jailer snapped out of his daze, and spat out a mouthful of cold air. He grabbed a chain and locked the cell door. At this time, the jailer strode in with a lantern, and looked around, looking for the stunning beauty that shopkeeper Yuan had mentioned. She wasn't in the womenfolk's cell, so it was obvious that she was in the womanizer's arms, but her face couldn't be seen clearly. "Who told you to lock people up like this?" The jailer kicked the jailer's butt. The jailer felt very wronged, but he didn't dare to refute, so he could only squeeze out a smile. The jailer raised the lantern high, and leaned close to the cell door to size up Qin Yining. With one look, the jailer came to a realization. She really was a beauty, no wonder Yuan Yujiang had specially instructed her. She was sent by the Lu family, so they didn't dare to act rashly, otherwise, "Open the door, lock this woman up alone over there." The jailer pointed to the opposite cell. When the jailer heard this, he hesitated. He was a little afraid of this woman. However, After being glared at by the jailer, he immediately trotted forward to do as he was told. Everyone looked at the jailer. Bing Tang and Ji Yun were very nervous, and whose fists were clenched so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. The jailer opened the door and came in to capture Qin Yining. How could Pang Xiao let him touch Qin Yining? He raised his leg and kicked the jailer's abdomen, causing him to stagger back a few steps and fall on his butt. Ouch! The jailer clutched his stomach and cried out in pain. You pretty boy, how dare you! The jailer was also stunned by this person's sudden action. After a long while, he scolded, How dare you behave so atrociously in here? I'm afraid you don't want to get out. Pang Xiao put one hand on his waist, and the other hand protected Qin Yining behind him. I advise you to think carefully. I'm the young master of the Wan family, and I came to Danju Prefecture to discuss business with Lu Zheng. Lu Zheng locked me up because of a misunderstanding, and he wants to let me out for business. If you dare to lay a finger on any one of us, Lu Zheng will skin all of you alive. You. The jailer glared. For a moment, he didn't know how to refute. Subconsciously, he felt that this person was right. After all, great shopkeeper Yuan said that young Master Lu didn't order them to take special care of these people. It was also great shopkeeper Yuan who said to take good care of them. Moreover, great shopkeeper Yuan had feelings for this woman, and he wasn't sure if young Master Lu would allow it. If he acted on his own initiative and offended someone, it would be bad for him in the future. Thinking of this, the jailer spat fiercely and walked out with the lantern. Don't give them food and drink. Starve them for 3 days, and I'll see if they can still be stubborn. Chapter 864. Just you wait, I'm going to skin you alive. Pang Xiao yelled back without hesitation. The prison guard was terrified when he saw the man's eyes and ran away. Without the prison guard, the prisoners in the other cells became bolder and looked over curiously. Some of them even whispered to each other. However, most of the prisoners were sitting on the ground weakly. They were in a daze and did not care about the outside world at all. Pang Xiao kicked the dirty and moldy straw on the ground and sat down casually. Then, he pulled Qin Yining into his arms and let her sit on his lap. His thighs were firm and strong. Even in this cold and damp cell, his embrace was very warm. Qin Yining said worriedly, The ground is cold. He took off the magenta blanket and folded it into a square. Sit on this. It's fine. It's not cold at all. Pang Xiao looked down at Qin Yining, who was tossing around in his arms. His eyes were so gentle that they were about to burst. However, Qin Yining refused to listen to him and insisted that she use the blanket as a cushion. Bing Tang, Huzi, and the others in the next cell saw this and could not help but smile. They also found a place to sit down. Qin Yining whispered to Pang Xiao, How long do you think Lu Zheng will keep us here? Who knows? But I'm sure he just wants to take us down a notch. Plus, he's focused on Lu Shi right now and has no time to care about us. Yeah. I think so too. Qin Yining whispered into Pang Xiao's ear. Before we came here, we were wondering who in the Lu family was here to talk about this. It seems like it's Lu Zheng. Yeah. Pang Xiao's ear was tickled by Qin Yining's warm breath. She could not help but kiss him on the cheek. Qin Yining was stunned and quickly looked next door. When he saw that no one was paying attention to them, he pinched Pang Xiao's waist gently. Pang Xiao chuckled. She hugged Qin Yining and rocked him. She whispered in his ear, It's good to be locked up with you, even if I have to go to jail. Silly girl, I've never seen anyone who thinks that being in prison is a good thing. Qin Yining felt as if he had just eaten honey. The sweetness flowed from his heart to his mouth. Even though Qin Yining knew that with Pang Xiao by his side, his safety was guaranteed, he still felt uneasy. There was only one torch in the prison, which was placed diagonally next to the window at the end of the corridor. The entire prison relied on this little bit of light. But later on, when the torches were extinguished, the sky was covered with dark clouds, and the moonlight and starlight could not be seen at all. The prison became so dark that one could not even see one's own fingers. Qin Yining curled up in Pang Xiao's arms. His ear was pressed against Pang Xiao's chest. He listened to his steady heartbeat and gradually fell asleep. Pang Xiao closed her eyes and slept lightly. Even when she was taking a nap, she did not forget to pay attention to her surroundings. Her arms were always around the person in her arms. This gave her a sense of security and made her feel at ease. At this moment, a series of footsteps suddenly came from the corridor. Then, they saw a candle light gradually approaching. The orange-red light moved slowly in the prison. Wherever it passed, it lit up for a moment. In the blink of an eye, it returned to darkness. The person who came stood outside the prison door where Pang Xiao and Qin Yining were. He placed the lantern on the door and said, "Young lady, how should I address you?" The arrival of this person startled everyone in the prison. Pang Xiao looked up and saw that it was the middle-aged man who had followed Lu Zhang in front of the pleasure boat. He came personally but spoke to Qin Yining. His intention was very clear. However, they did not know whether it was his own idea or Lu Zhang's order. Qin Yining rubbed her sleepy eyes. She glanced at Grand Shopkeeper Yuan and asked, "Who are you?" "My surname is Yuan. I am the head shopkeeper under young Master Lu. I manage many businesses and shops." Grand Shopkeeper Yuan smiled very gently. Qin Yining narrowed her almond-shaped eyes slightly. Then, she smiled and said, "So it's Grand Shopkeeper Yuan. Do you have any orders for me?" Looking at a beauty under the lantern light, she looked even more beautiful. Moreover, when she smiled, Grand Shopkeeper Yuan's bones were about to melt. He thought to himself, could it be that the beauty doesn't want to stay in the prison and wants to grab onto me, her lifesaver? Ah, it's not an order. I just came to see how the situation in the prison is like. "Miss, do you lack anything?" Grand Shopkeeper Yuan smiled even more gently. "I don't lack anything in the prison." Isn't Grand Shopkeeper Yuan asking unnecessary questions? Qin Yining frowned in disdain. "There isn't even a blanket here. How can I rest? My young master came here to discuss business with young Master Lu, but as soon as he saw him, he threw him into prison without any explanation. Is this how you treat your guests?" The woman's tone was not strong and her voice was not sharp. Her soft voice echoed in the prison. However, every word she said was like a slap to the face. Grand Shopkeeper Yuan was embarrassed for a moment after hearing what she said. Then, he could not take his eyes off Qin Yining. "Miss, it turns out that you are a very thoughtful person. It seems that I can't treat you as an ordinary woman who has no thoughts and no brains just because you are a woman." Grand Shopkeeper Yuan smiled and said, "I'd like to talk to you. Would you do me the honor?" Talking to a strange woman in the middle of the night. Pang Xiao was furious. If Qin Yining had not secretly pinched him, he would have lost his temper long ago. Qin Yining chuckled and said, "Does your young Master Lu know what you are doing?" Grand Shopkeeper Yuan's expression froze slightly. "I am doing this for the Lu family. Young Master understands my painstaking efforts." "I see. Grand Shopkeeper Yuan, you have worked hard and made great contributions. However, I appreciate your kindness. Please go back and tell young Master Lu that if he wants to talk to me, let him come in person. Remember, it's daytime, not the middle of the night." When she mentioned the words daytime and the middle of the night, she was clearly exposing Grand Shopkeeper Yuan's intention. She was mocking his character in public without mercy. The prison guard standing at the corner lowered his head and tried to reduce his presence. However, there was more than one person in the prison. Grand Shopkeeper Yuan thought that this woman was tactful. Who would have thought that she would not give him any face? Good, very good. Why don't you take a look at yourself? What kind of person are you? Why are you pretending to be chaste in front of me? Grand Shopkeeper Yuan is indeed knowledgeable. You even know the phrase chaste and chaste. Qin Yining sneered. Grand Shopkeeper Yuan was so angry that he leaned back. He grabbed the wooden bars on the prison door and took a few deep breaths. His anger had not subsided, but he looked calm on the surface. He suddenly smiled. "It seems that you look down on a small shopkeeper like me. I hope you won't regret it in the future. When you come to talk to me again, I'm afraid it won't be so easy. Goodbye. Take care. I won't see you off. If I see young Master Lu later, I will put in a few good words for you in front of him." After all, there are not many grand shopkeepers like you who are so conscientious. How many people can do this in the middle of the night and not go back to sleep, but come to the prison to visit a strange woman? Grand shopkeeper Yuan's face alternated between red and white. He glared at Qin Yining for a while, then turned and walked away quickly with the lantern. His footsteps were even faster than when he came. Qin Yining sneered. He turned around and whispered to Pang Xiao, "Ignore him. This kind of person is no big deal. There's nothing to be afraid of." Seeing that his wife was being lusted after, Pang Xiao had a bellyful of anger that he had nowhere to vent. Even if Qin Yining had the upper hand, he still had zero tolerance for this kind of thing. But when he met Qin Yining's gentle eyes, he could not show a black face no matter what. Pang Xiao took a deep breath and touched her cheek with his big hand. "Okay, good girl. Go to sleep." Qin Yining nodded and leaned into Pang Xiao's arms. "You should go to sleep too. You need to recharge your energy." "Okay." Pang Xiao gently patted her back, as if he was coaxing a child. Huzi, Bing Tang, and the others finally relaxed. Obviously, they were also very angry with Grand Shopkeeper Yuan. If Pang Xiao had raised his arm and called for help, these people would have immediately rushed out of the prison. Everyone was mentally prepared. Since Lu Zheng wanted to show them his power, even if he did not use torture, they would not have an easy time. The dark and damp environment of the prison was very depressing. The air was always filled with a fishy smell. The rats were very bold. Sometimes, they would pass by in groups of 3 or 5. In addition, the food was deliberately harsh. For 3 days, everyone only ate brown rice porridge that could reflect their shadows. Fortunately, Bing Tang was smart and carried a small medicine bag with them. Afraid that they would fall sick, everyone was given a pill to replenish blood and qi. Qin Yining was so hungry that she did not have much strength. She rested her head on Pang Xiao's shoulder and said with a slightly hoarse voice, "I think this is enough." Pang Xiao's lips were also a little pale. He stroked Qin Yining's long hair with his big hand. "I think so too. Don't worry, he is not the one who makes the decisions. His family still has the old master. He can only use his personal power to this extent." As expected, Great Shopkeeper Yuan came in the afternoon of the same day. When he saw the jailer and the jailer, Grand Shopkeeper Yuan's expression was normal. It was just that he was not as friendly as before. The jailer secretly cursed Great Shopkeeper Yuan for being narrow-minded. He wanted to spend the night with the beauty, but he ended up being angered by the beauty. Not only did he lose face, but he also vented his anger on others. However, even though he was cursing in his heart, he still couldn't show his emotions on his face. "How have they been these days? Have they been obedient?" Grand Shopkeeper Yuan asked. The jailer bowed and said respectfully, "They have followed your orders. There is a limit to their food and drink. They are so hungry that they don't even have the strength to speak. They will definitely not dare to resist." When Grand Shopkeeper Yuan heard this, he secretly regretted that he didn't restrain himself that day and actually came that very night. It was also because that woman was too attractive. If he wasn't in a hurry and waited until now, that woman might have suffered enough, and perhaps she would submit to him. Grand Shopkeeper Yuan sighed in his heart as he walked quickly into the prison. Standing in front of the cell where Pang Xiao and Qin Yining were, he looked at the 2 embarrassed people and said unwillingly, "Have you thought it through?" Pang Xiao raised his eyelids and glanced at Grand Shopkeeper Yuan. His tone was still domineering. "I am the young master of the Wan family. How dare you treat me like this? I will definitely report to the old master when I go back." Chapter 865. This young master still hadn't grown up. What were the people at Guangdong thinking? How could they arrange for such a person to negotiate? "Get up, all of you. If you want to report back, you should report back to my young master first. He's already waiting for you at the Lu family." Pang Xiao's eyes lit up, like a child who had just received candy. He said in surprise, "Really? Of course. This young master doesn't have to stay in this damned place anymore." Head Shopkeeper Yuan didn't even bother to answer. He turned around and ordered the jailers to open the door. The sound of chains rattling could be heard from the prison cells. The doors of all 3 cells were opened. Pang Xiao helped Qin Yining to stand up. He thumped his thighs that were sore from being sat on by Qin Yining. Qin Yining smiled apologetically. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Everyone breathed a sigh of relief and followed head shopkeeper Yuan out of the prison. The prisoners in the prison all shouted that they were wronged. However, they couldn't leave even if they wanted to. The sky outside the prison was dark blue. It was a refreshing autumn season. Qin Yining squinted his eyes because he couldn't get used to the bright light. Pang Xiao also closed his eyes for a while before opening them. Head shopkeeper Yuan looked at the group of people with disdain and said, "Young Master Wan's servants can return to your pleasure boat. Our family's young master hasn't touched anything on the pleasure boat. As for you, you can come with me." Pang Xiao acted shamelessly. "I'm not going. We're all starving. If we go with you, are we going to the Lu family to eat?" Head shopkeeper Yuan couldn't help but roll his eyes. Was discussing business more important than eating? Even if they had been starving for 3 days, business was right in front of them. They couldn't just ignore it. Head shopkeeper Yuan was ordered to lead these people. Naturally, he could only endure and accompany Pang Xiao and the others back to the pleasure boat. After everyone freshened up, the cook reluctantly cooked some rice porridge. Everyone made do with it. They had been starving for too long, so eating too much at once was not good. Therefore, Qin Yining and Pang Xiao only ate a bowl of rice porridge and some side dishes. After Pang Xiao had his fill, he brought Qin Yining, Huzi, Ji Yun, and Bing Tang down the boat to look for manager Yuan. Grand shopkeeper Yuan was already impatient from waiting. Seeing that Pang Xiao was hugging a beauty when he went to talk business, Junjun was jealous, envious, and disdainful. She snorted. Given the mission, he still brought a group of people to the Lu family. The Lu family's mansion was much larger than Qin Yining had imagined. The 2 stone lions in front of the gate were polished and shiny. When the group of people passed by in the carriage, the servants sitting on the steps in front of the gate, who were talking in low voices, all looked in their direction. Grand Manager Yuan ordered the coachman to drive the carriage to the side door. The coachman nodded and drove the carriage past the main entrance. When they reached the corner, they turned right. This street was a little narrower than the main street, but the road was as clean as the main street. As soon as the carriage arrived, the boy guarding the gate came up to salute. "Here you are, Grand Manager Yuan." Grand Manager Yuan nodded with a smile and got out of the carriage first. He stood beside the carriage with his hands in the sleeves and watched Mrs. Ning get out of the carriage expressionlessly. After being starved in the prison for 3 days, this beauty had lost some weight. Her waist was so slim that it could be pinched with 2 hands. When she lowered her eyes and moved, her long eyelashes fluttered like the wings of butterflies. Grand Manager Yuan sighed secretly. He didn't seize the opportunity. He was afraid that he couldn't get her now. As for what would happen in the future, it depended on First Young Master. If First Young Master could get her, he was afraid that he couldn't get her. If First Young Master couldn't get her, he would find a way to get her from Young Master Wan in the future. He didn't believe that a dissolute man like Young Master Wan would favor a woman for a long time. Pang Xiao helped Qin Yining stand still. Of course, he didn't miss the calculation and greed in Grand Manager Yuan's eyes. He curled up the corners of his mouth and said calmly, "Grand Manager Yuan, please lead the way." Grand Shopkeeper Yuan came back to his senses and led the 2 into the mansion. They walked through a long alley and arrived at the study room in the outer courtyard. They passed through a hall, circled around a corridor, and passed through a begonia door. Finally, they arrived at a secluded courtyard. The green wooden door of the courtyard was open. A little girl stood quietly in front of the door. There were 3 main rooms in the courtyard. A stone path led to the main door. The side rooms on both sides had side rooms. There was a lush osmanthus tree on the left side. A stone table was placed under the grape trellis on the right side. There were a few bamboos planted close to the courtyard wall. The lotus flowers in the vats had already bloomed and withered. A few koi fish were swimming leisurely. Lu Zhang and Lu Shi were sitting at the stone table under the grape trellis, playing chess. "Young master, I've brought them here." Grand Manager Yuan's voice was soft, as if he was afraid to disturb Lu Zhang's train of thought. Lu Zhang held a white chess piece in his hand and observed the game. He put down a piece slowly and a soft dong sound came from the chessboard. He acted as if he didn't hear the sound and didn't pay attention to the person beside him. Lu Shi wasn't as calm as Lu Zhang. He looked up at Pang Xiao with a complicated expression. However, since Lu Zhang didn't say anything, he didn't say anything either. He quietly put down another 2 pieces. Lu Zhang seemed to come to his senses at this moment. He smiled and said, "I know. Grand Manager Yuan, you should go and rest first. Thank you for coming." "I don't dare. This humble one will take his leave." Grand Manager Yuan smiled apologetically and retreated out of the courtyard. However, he was a little surprised. Could it be that eldest young master knew that he secretly went to the prison to meet Lady Ning? At this moment, 2 beautiful maidservants came out of the room. They carried 2 handfuls of tea and a small table made of rattan. After they arranged everything properly, they led Pang Xiao and Qin Yining to their seats. Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and Huzi all retreated to the corner of the courtyard. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao didn't drink any tea. They just waited quietly for Lu Zhang to finish playing chess. It was obvious that this was a show of strength by the other party. This kind of show of strength was neither painful nor itchy. Although the intention of humiliating them was very direct, Qin Yining and Pang Xiao were people who had seen great storms and waves. They didn't care about this kind of thing that couldn't cause any substantial harm. The husband and wife only cared about whether the matter could be completed or not. However, Pang Xiao was playing the role of an idiot. Naturally, he couldn't appear too calm at this time. It was as if there were worms growing on his body. He would change his sitting position after a while. He would drink tea with a slurp sound and put down the teacup. In short, he vividly portrayed the image of a willful, impatient, and rude person. Qin Yining couldn't help but laugh as he watched from the side. Lu Zheng originally wanted to continue tearing down the Wan family's eldest young master's prestige. Who would have thought that after being imprisoned for 3 days, this person didn't improve at all? He was still the same. Listening to the noise he made, no matter how good his mood was, Lu Zheng lost his interest. He put down the chess piece and waved his hand at Lu Shi. Lu Shi nodded and said, "Yes." He stood up and stood to the side to serve. "I've kept the 2 of you waiting. I was in the mood to play chess and neglected the important guests." Lu Zheng said politely. Normally, people who needed the Lu family's help would take advantage of the situation and say don't neglect to get closer. Pang Xiao said carelessly, "Isn't that so? We've waited for so long. Why hasn't the winner been decided yet?" Lu Zheng took a deep breath and said with a smile, "You're the eldest young master of Guangtong Group's Wan family?" Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. After all, they were in disguise. Pang Xiao raised his chin confidently, "Yes." Lu Zheng shook his head and said regretfully, "Why did your Guangtong Group send someone like you? Aren't you afraid of ruining the business and tarnishing the reputation of the company?" "Hey, what do you mean? I'm the future owner of Guangtong Group. How am I ruining the business and tarnishing the reputation of my family?" Lu Zheng shook his head again and again. He looked like a scholar who couldn't explain himself to a soldier. "Fine, fine. Are you here to talk about the Imperial Envoy business? Let's finish the business quickly so that we don't have to meet again." Pang Xiao crossed his arms and rolled his eyes. "You think I want to talk to you? If it wasn't for the old master's orders, would I be suffering here? I'll explain to the old master when I get back. This is how the Lu family treats their customers. If it wasn't for your old master crying and begging, do you think you have the right to sit here and talk to me?" Lu Zheng was disgusted with the man's chatter and went straight to the point. "Fine, fine. Tell me, why does Guangtong Group want to buy an imperial envoy?" Pang Xiao looked left and right, then glared at Lu Shi warily. "Don't worry. No one here will spread our words." Then he laughed mockingly, "Even if it does, there's nothing to be afraid of. Our Lu family's business isn't new. This kind of business isn't rare. If anyone dares to criticize, our Lu family naturally has a way to deal with it. With such a confident tone and such a familiar posture, Qin Yining believed that Lu Zheng was telling the truth. They did do a lot of business like this. He even said it so easily. The Lu family's foundation was deep and they were powerful. It seemed that it was more immeasurable than she thought. But was it really good to do business like this? Qin Yining fell into deep thought. Pang Xiao snorted, "To tell you the truth, our Guangdong group wants to take root in the old capital of the Dian dynasty. In order to expand our business and expand our network, there are naturally many things that are inconvenient. There's no one in the imperial court, so our hands are tied. The local officials there are also very stubborn. That's why we thought that the imperial court could arrange for a temporary official to support us." Lu Zheng sneered, "You think it's easy. The appointment of an imperial envoy has to be personally announced by the emperor. If the emperor doesn't appoint an imperial envoy, do you think it's so easy for anyone to arrange an imperial envoy? That depends on your family's ability. Otherwise, our money won't be worth it. Aren't you just destroying your own reputation?" Lu Zheng looked at the ruffian face of young Master Wn and felt annoyed. It was a pity that such a good appearance was wasted. He simply shifted his gaze and openly admired the beauty. "Since we let you come, we have the ability. But it's true that it's difficult. Moreover, we agreed to meet on the 10th of October. You came a bit early. Aren't I in a hurry? Besides, I've never been to Danju City before. That's why I came to look around." Pang Xiao was a bit afraid of being exposed and calmly gave a reasonable excuse. Chapter 866. Why is the deal only half done even though the conditions are right? Pang Xiao stood up anxiously. Qin Yining acted awkward at the right time. He stood up and quietly tugged at Pang Xiao's sleeve. Pang Xiao seemed to have just reacted. He sat down awkwardly and coughed to cover it up. Lu Zheng looked at him coldly for a while. Seeing him like this, he raised the corner of his lips and said mockingly, "Listen to my conditions first. If you agree, we'll continue the discussion. If you don't, then there's no need to continue the discussion. You don't have to be so agitated right now." Cough. When did I get agitated? You must be mistaken. Pang Xiao's face was filled with stubbornness. However, there was a hint of dispiritedness in his sitting posture. His expression was stiff and unwilling. Lu Zheng didn't believe that he could do anything with the saber in his hands. Sensing Lu Zheng's disdainful gaze, Pang Xiao purposely snorted in dissatisfaction. Lu Zheng thought to himself that this young master of the Wn family wasn't a complete idiot. At least he knew to keep quiet at this time. Our conditions are simple. First, I want to know if the Wn family has a designated candidate in the imperial court. If it's more difficult, then we'll have to calculate another condition. Pang Xiao's heart skipped a beat. "Oh, I do have a candidate. He seems to be a secondary class, rank 5 civil official. I've recorded his name in a book. I'll check it later. I'm very busy every day. I'm afraid I'll remember wrongly." What a busy day. Lu Zheng curled his lips and shook his head in amusement. After hearing Lu Shi's reply, he was a little suspicious of this foppish young master in front of him. He ordered people to secretly observe him. After learning the results of the investigation, he didn't even bother to send people to follow him anymore. This person spent all his time drinking and partying. Otherwise, he would bring beauties out to play. He didn't do anything serious. Instead, he was very good at eating, drinking, and playing. The purpose of his trip to Danju City was to discuss business. Most likely, this young master was here to have fun. Lu Zheng couldn't even be bothered to look at him. He looked at the obedient and dignified woman next to him and felt pity again. Since you already have a candidate in mind, things will be easier. Since that's the case, my Lu family will think of a way to promote the person you've chosen to be the imperial envoy of the old capital. Once you've decided on the person, let me know. At this point, Lu Zheng couldn't help but remind him again, you have to figure out who the person is before telling me. Don't get the wrong person. This is a business deal. If you get the wrong person and come back to tell me that the person you want to promote is someone else, I won't care. What are you saying? Do you think we'll blame you for your position alone? Besides, I'm an adult. It's not like I can't read. How could I make a mistake? Pang Xiao was furious. Are you trying to humiliate me? Lu Zheng waved his hand as if he couldn't be bothered to argue. As a price, our Lu family will take half of the Guangdong ship's annual profits as remuneration. What? Are you trying to coax me? You're robbing me. Pang Xiao was furious. We're the ones who set the rules. If you're not satisfied with the price, you can choose not to do this business. It's not like my Lu family is in a hurry to help your WN family. Pang Xiao gritted his teeth and paced around in annoyance. This isn't a small sum. Let's not talk about whether we're going to make a deal or not. Even if we agree to give you half of the profits, what if you don't succeed in the end? What if the person we've chosen doesn't become an imperial envoy? Lu Zheng looked down on his pettiness and said coldly, you don't have to worry about that. I've said it many times. This isn't the first time the Lu family has done this kind of business. Your master is willing to beg the Lu family because he knows the Lu family's ability. If we can't do it, we won't ask for your remuneration. As he spoke, he crossed his legs and played with a chess piece in his hand. He mocked, the Lu family has 100 years of foundation. To put it bluntly, half of the Guangdong ship's profits are nothing to us. I really don't care. You're too good at talking big. Do you think our Guangdong ship is a small shop opened by those small families? Pang Xiao stared at Lu Zheng with his neck straightened. Lu Zheng sneered, I don't have the patience to bargain with you. If you don't agree, there's no need to continue this business. You can do whatever you want. But this request of yours is too much. Half of our future profits? You might as well rob people directly. It's faster to make money. Enough. Lu Zheng waved his hand, if you don't think it's suitable, please go back. Pang Xiao swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. Is there no room for negotiation? Can't it be less? Lu Zheng looked at him up and down with disdain. Then he raised his eyebrows at Qin Yining and said bluntly, You're Mrs. Ning? Qin Yining stood up and lowered his eyes. I am. It's a pity that you're with such a person. If you're willing to stay, you'll have a better life in the future than in the WAN family. Lu Zheng stood up and walked slowly to Qin Yining with his hands behind his back. He bent down to look at Qin Yining's pretty face and smiled at Pang Xiao. If you're willing to give Mrs. Ning to me, I might consider your request. I'm willing to pay less. Pang Xiao pulled Qin Yining behind him. No way. She's mine. Lu Zheng spread his hands. You can ask the beauty's opinion. Qin Yining pulled Pang Xiao's sleeve and lowered his head shyly. Thank you for your kindness, young Master Lu. I'm already young Master Wan's woman. Although I'm from a humble background, I know that a woman doesn't serve a second husband. Please forgive me, young Master Lu. Do you know why you're refusing? This is the Lu family, a century-old family. The Lu family is very big and good. But young Master Wan has never mistreated me. When Lu Zheng looked at Qin Yining again, the look in his eyes became deeper. He thought that this Mrs. Ning was a heartless plaything who used her beauty to please others. He didn't expect that she was so loyal to this idiot. The more she was like this, the more Lu Zheng thought highly of her. Pang Xiao stomped his feet angrily and shouted with dissatisfaction, Don't go too far. I said she's mine. I won't give her to anyone else. If you want to talk about business, just talk about business. Why do you have to involve a woman? Lu Zheng didn't continue the topic with Pang Xiao and only said, So, will you give me half of Guangdong's future profits? Pang Xiao pretended to struggle, but in fact, he was already calculating in his mind. If Lu Zheng asked for money this time, Pang Xiao would have to bleed for the sake of the plan. But Lu Zheng wanted half of Guangdong's profits. Profits were naturally different every year, so it needed to be calculated every year. Since it needed to be calculated, it couldn't be immediately asked for money. This was not a bad idea. He could agree immediately, and he didn't need to pay for it. He could let Guangtong and the Lu family settle the score slowly. Maybe he could get this done without spending a lot of effort, and he could also get a large sum of money from these two families. Pang Xiao had an idea and asked deliberately, "Okay, but what if you don't get it done? If the person we appointed doesn't become an imperial envoy, how will you return the money? If that's the case, our deal will be invalid. If the Lu family doesn't fulfill their promise, your Guangtong won't have to hand over half of your annual profits." Lu Zheng was obviously very familiar with this process and said, "We'll arrange for someone to do it first. Once it's done, we'll arrange for someone to be the second manager of your Guangtong. This way, the accounts will be fair to everyone, and it'll be convenient to pay the profits." When Pang Xiao heard this, he was sure that he didn't need to pay for it, and he felt more confident. He thought for a while, then like a warrior cutting his wrist, he reluctantly said, "Then let's write the contract." Lu Zheng looked at Pang Xiao with disdain as if he was looking at an idiot. "Write the contract for this kind of deal? Heh, don't worry, our Lu family has never cheated our customers in this kind of business." Pang Xiao also seemed to think that if he wrote the contract for selling official positions and titles, wouldn't he be leaving behind an irrefutable evidence? He looked uncomfortable and said with a stiff neck, "If you don't want to write it, then don't write it. But aren't you afraid that Guangtong won't give us money after you complete the deal?" Lu Zheng said sarcastically, "You can try. Let's see if that imperial envoy can continue to live, and if your Guangtong ship can continue to operate." Lu Zheng's smile was gentle and amiable, but in the eyes of others, it was like a blunt knife cutting flesh. Pang Xiao trembled. Lu Zheng smiled with satisfaction, and added, "Don't worry, you and Mrs. Ning can stay in the Lu residence for the time being. Since you agreed to our terms, we are business partners. Our Lu family has always been courteous and generous to our partners. You can take this opportunity to experience the local customs of Danju. When the imperial envoy is injured, you can take the shopkeeper back to Guangtong to fulfill your promise." Although it was simple, Pang Xiao and Qin Yining's hearts tightened. Lu Zheng meant to detain them in the Lu residence as hostages until the imperial envoy took over. Pang Xiao was the young master of the Wan family. No matter what, he was still the young master of the Guangtong ship. If the Guangtong ship did anything that displeased the Lu family, or if the Guangtong ship was here to fish, the Lu family could immediately punish him. "I believe our business will be very successful." Lu Zheng smiled warmly. With such an important bargaining chip, the Guangtong would not be able to make any waves. Pang Xiao quickly calculated the pros and cons in his mind, and finally nodded helplessly. He rolled his eyes and smiled, "Then I will have to stay in the residence and disturb you." Hearing his tone as if he wanted to take advantage of the world, Lu Zheng knew what he was thinking. He could not help but sneer at him. He was the young master of a big family, and yet he was so proud of taking advantage of the situation. Was he not afraid of losing his dignity as a noble young master? It was funny how stingy he was. The Lu family was a big family, and naturally did not care about such a small amount of money. Since the deal was done, it was not a big deal to entertain the customer. Chapter 867. That's great. There's food, a place to stay, and even fun. Your Lu family's hospitality is quite good. It would be even better if there were a few beautiful maids to serve you. Young Master Wan's eyes flashed with greed when he saw the satisfied expression on his face. It was obvious that he yearned for the days of eating and drinking in the Lu family. His disdain deepened. Now that the business was settled, they were business partners. The Lu family didn't really care about using money to entertain business partners, but young Master Wan's face made Lu Zheng feel disgusted. "Lu Shi, send young Master Wan and his group to the guest courtyard." Lu Zheng flicked his sleeves and turned around. Pang Xiao held Qin Yining's hand and brought along Huzi, Bing Tang, and Ji Yun. They happily followed behind Lu Shi to the guest courtyard. Although the Lu family's residence was just a branch residence, it was still a century-old residence that had been renovated several times. The guest courtyard's architecture was obviously newer. It was probably built for the convenience of receiving guests. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao admired the scenery while secretly memorizing the layout and location along the way. Lu Shi also couldn't help but size up the two. Seeing that they were both amazed, he confirmed Lu Zheng's previous guess. It seemed that the Guangtong family's WN family was a nouveau riche without any foundation. This young master WAN was probably an idiot who didn't have much knowledge in his stomach. At first, he thought that this person purposely reminded him on the boat to help the young master solve a problem. Now, he understood that he had overestimated this person. The guest courtyard was at the northeast corner of the Lu family's residence. It was connected to the outer courtyard on the back street. There was a side door for easy access. There were 3 main rooms in the courtyard. There were 2 side rooms on each side. The back seats were turned into small kitchens. This was also the Lu family's thoughtfulness. Guests who stayed for a long time could go to the main kitchen to order dishes. They could also cook for themselves. Qin Yining looked around the courtyard and leaned against Pang Xiao, looking tired. Pang Xiao asked, "Beauty, are you tired?" "Yes. I haven't been able to eat or sleep well in prison these days. How can I not be tired?" Lu Shi smiled and bowed his head. It was just a misunderstanding. "Young master has already prepared food and wine for the 2 of you. Someone will send it over in a moment." She turned around and introduced the 2 sturdy female servants and the 2 young maidservants behind her. They are Old Maid Hua and Old Maid Zhong, specially arranged by the young master for Master Wan and Mrs. Ning. 2 old maids in dark green armor came forward and saluted. "Greetings, Child Wan and Mrs. Ning." Lu Shi continued, "This is Sulan and Sufang." "Greetings, young master, wife." The 2 maidservants wearing light green narrow-sleeved jackets and dark green armor bowed together. Pang Xiao's eyes swept over the 2 maidservants, then she shook her head and said with dissatisfaction, "Don't you have any pretty girls in your residence? Like Fu Shui?" Lu Shi clenched her fists in an instant, and the blue veins on her forehead jumped twice. She put on a fake smile and said, "It's rare to see someone as pretty as Mrs. Ning." Pang Xiao waved his hand and said generously, Well, you can go. You don't need to serve here. Does anyone want to come down and serve you?" Lu Shi couldn't help complaining in her heart. Because the other party was a business partner, she could only force herself to hold back. She said yes respectfully and left after saluting. Pang Xiao put his arm around Qin Yining's waist and entered the room. He asked Bing Tang to follow the 2 maidservants to get the food. Ji Yun and the 2 nannies went to prepare the bedroom, leaving only Huzi beside them. When there was no one around, Pang Xiao and Huzi checked the surroundings carefully again. After making sure that no one was monitoring and eavesdropping, they relaxed. Pang Xiao could finally sit upright as usual. He said with a smile, deliberately bending my neck is more tiring than fighting a war." Qin Yining giggled, "Don't I feel tired talking in a coquettish voice? In fact, I like your appearance very much." Qin Yining couldn't help but stare at him. "I'm afraid that it will become a habit. If I don't behave properly when I go back, I can't teach the children well." "That's true." Pang Xiao touched his chin and nodded. Huzi, who was standing aside, couldn't help but chuckle when he saw that the topic of the 2 of them happily turned back to the children. Pang Xiao stared at Huzi. Huzi immediately kept quiet and retreated to the corner. Qin Yining's face was a little hot. He coughed to clear his throat and asked seriously, "Are you going to tell your people to the Lu family and let them arrange it?" "That's what I want to do." Pang Xiao thought of Lu Zheng's appearance just now and shook his head with a smile. Although he is a gentleman, he is still inexperienced. "It's because you acted too well." Pang Xiao laughed and said proudly, "I couldn't help laughing when I saw him looking at me with disdain. But this deal is really good. I don't need to pay the capital and I can get 1 for 1. Qin Yining counted with his fingers for him, "You don't need to pay the capital now. In the future, the Lu family will arrange for people to go to Guangtong. Your people can be imperial envoys and we can have more confidence in the old capital. As long as we don't expose our contact with the Chiu family, everything will be fine." "Exactly. After the deal is done, we can retreat. Not only can the Lu family arrange people for me for free, but we can also make the Chiu family pay a price." After that, they will settle accounts with each other and I'm afraid they will become enemies. Huzi clicked his tongue. They will be in big trouble this time. If we don't do it, we will be the unlucky ones in the future. Pang Xiao supported his face with one hand and smiled. In the coming days, I will have to trouble you to accompany me to travel. Qin Yining smiled and said, it's my pleasure. Pang Xiao had to go all the way. In the days that followed in the Lu family, Pang Xiao played the role of a petty playboy to the fullest. On one hand, he showed off his wealth, but on the other hand, he wanted to take advantage of the Lu family. He took Qin Yining to visit all the scenic spots around Danju City. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao went out to play every day. When they returned to the Lu family, they were treated with good wine and good food. They lived a happy life. It was the most peaceful and sweet time they had had since their wedding. Lu Zheng originally paid attention to young Master Wan and investigated him. But in the end, Lu Zheng didn't even bother to look at him. Occasionally, he heard from Lu Shi that young Master Wan lived in the guest house and took beautiful women to tour the mountains and enjoy the scenery. Then he looked at his busy days and thought of young Master Wan's contemptible face. He couldn't help but feel irritated. Young master, have some hot tea and take a rest. Lu Shi put a delicate white porcelain teacup in Lu Zheng's hand. Lu Zheng nodded and took a sip of tea. What else does young Master Wan do except eat, drink, and play? I haven't seen him do anything else. He seems to be busy trying to please Mrs. Ning these days. He bought a lot of gold and silver jewelry, rouge, face powder, silk, and satin. They couldn't fit everything in the guest house, so he arranged for people to send them back to the ship. Yes. How is Mrs. Ning living with him? Is she bored? Lu Shi wasn't surprised. He had seen through Lu Zheng's feelings for Mrs. Ning. Mrs. Ning is still the same as before. Young master, you care about Mrs. Ning a lot. Lu Zheng snorted and said bluntly, that idiot tarnished the beauty for no reason. Unfortunately, the beauty is blind. Lu Shi agreed. That guy with the surname Wan was just a little lucky to have met a beauty first. If young master likes her, he can use some tricks to get her. Looking at young Master Wan's appearance, he was just a bag of skin. Young Master Wan was handsome and confident, not inferior to young Master Wan. In addition, the Lu family's foundation was right there. Lu Zhang was a little melancholy, but last time I asked, Mrs. Ning bluntly refused. Lu Shi shook his head in amusement. With Lu Zhang's status, all his women rushed to get close to him. Lu Zheng didn't even need to ask. Among all the maids in the mansion, as long as they were pretty, which one of them did not want to be Lu Zheng's maid? Young master, your relationship has always been too smooth. Perhaps the young master had never truly fallen in love with any woman. Lu Zheng was stunned for a moment as if he was lost in his memories. After a while, he said, yes. Speaking of which, there is no woman that I can't get. The master and the servant fell into a short silence. After a while, Lu Zheng came to his senses and said, go to the warehouse. I remember that someone sent me a set of jade head ornaments inlaid with gold and jade a few days ago. Together with several sets of earrings and cloves, there are a total of 108 pieces. You can send the box to Mrs. Ning. Lu Shi was surprised. Did young madam see that set before? Lu Zheng said, she has a lot of jade. She doesn't care about this set. Go ahead. See if Mrs. Ning likes it or not. Yes. Lu Shi thought for a moment and suggested, young master, this time when you send the jewelry, why don't you avoid that young Master Wan? Who knows, maybe she was afraid of young Master Wan's presence and couldn't agree, so she rejected young master? That's reasonable. Lu Zheng thought for a while and said, well, you don't need to get it. I'll ask young madam to do it. It's easier for women to talk. Lu Shi hesitated and persuaded, I'm afraid it's not good for young madam to know. Why not? Lu Zheng didn't understand and raised his eyebrows, she will marry into the family sooner or later. Won't she know then? Besides, she is the legal wife. Shouldn't she deal with these things? Lu Shi thought for a while and found it reasonable. So, she didn't say more. Therefore, when Qin Yining and Pang Xiao were discussing where to go today, someone came to the door of the guest house to deliver a message. After a while, Bing Tang came to the corridor and said, "Mrs. Ning, young madam wants to see you." Qin Yining raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Young madam wants to see me?" Bing Tang said at the door, "Yes." Qin Yining and Pang Xiao looked at each other and stood up. "I'll go and see what she wants to do. Maybe I can get something out of her." Pang Xiao thought for a while and shook her head. "No, you'd better not go. This young madam didn't show up at the beginning. She must be ordered by Lu Zheng to come here suddenly. Lu Zheng didn't like me from the beginning. There's no relationship between noble ladies. She must have a reason to come to you. After all, Lu family is the most powerful family here. You'd better not take the risk." "You're right. Then I won't go." Pang Xiao simply held Qin Yining's shoulder and went out. "Let's go out and discuss where to go today." Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and Huzi immediately followed. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.